We've got nice sunny weather in St. Petersburg. Well, yeah, it seems like from your side, all the nasty weather came down to ours. Don't worry. Petersburg is going to be Petersburg. Don't worry. Only sunny days from here on out.
How many participants? Alena? Володя,
Все слышно.
Алене Александровне Вандышевой слово предоставь, а то она
And
спешит.
now we're going to give the word to Alena Vandeshwa because she's trying to hurry up here. Okay, we can hear everything. Will it start at all? Okay, we're happy. Okay, good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Lena. Alena Alexandrovna, she's not only deputy dean of our faculty, but she is also a partner to our university. So she's ours. Do I not need to choose anything? It's said to pick a language or something similar. Yeah, but that's if you're going to be listening to presentations in English, then you'll need to pick Russian. But for now, if you were just listening in Russian, you can not select it. Of course, live is better, but it's hard to get so many people together in one spot when we're doing it live. Alexander Yurievich, I was driving by the strategy building today in the morning. Yeah. Yep, that's right. It is especially important when the participants of the program remember. And in part, thanks to this, Vladimir, thank you very much for the idea. We had various participants gather together, our international partners. And by the way, we have submitted an application recently, Vladimir, an application for getting the grant from the Faculty of Social Politics for the program that is to do with public budgeting. So that was a great stimulus as well. Yeah, see, that's a good thing. Well, we're not sure how that application is going to go, but it's at least interesting. Okay, Tatiana is here with us as well. And Zoom actually works. Yeah, I was here like half an hour ago. Yeah. We are, of course, questioning whether it's going to keep working. Yesterday, there was a panic all over the place. People were questioning whether everything is going to continue streaming or will it cut out halfway through. Good morning, everybody. Welcome, colleagues. Now it's already 10 o'clock. So we have everything we need to start the work that we need to conduct today. And now let us slowly, indeed, get started. Once again, everybody, good morning, good day. Allow me to introduce myself for those who do not know me. My name is Vladimir Vagin. I am the leader of the Budgeting Center for the Financial Institute of the Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation, and I'm the moderator of first session. And so it turned out that Vladimir Vyacheslavyich was apologizing to everybody. He had to go to the ministry, and he asked me to say the introductory words instead of him because he could not be present for this beginning part. So please do not be surprised if I overuse my time, but that's because I also have the time for the introductory word. And I would like to share about the idea, about the entire concept of this conference. But before we do it, a couple of formalities that we need to get through. Now, in order for our international panel to be conducted, we have 50 participants register. And out of them, we have over 20% of foreign participants from Germany, from India, from Italy, from Mexico, from Portugal, from Croatia. And what is especially pleasant to us, we also have a representative delegation from the Republic of Uzbekistan and our colleagues from Kazakhstan. So we do have a very fairly wide representation. In Russia, we have 35 various subjects of the Russian Federation participating. So that's almost half. And we have a great representative group from Krasnoyarsk, St. Petersburg, Moscow, Kaliningradsky region, Stavropol region, Amursk, Republic, and I see a lot of familiar faces today, but I think despite the familiar faces, many are unfamiliar, and that makes me smile. It makes me happy. And the very idea of this conference was originally incepted as a certain necessity and a certain wish to conduct the first scientific panel conference that would be dedicated to the questions of openness in terms of budget, in citizen participation, in the budgeting decisions in Russian Federation. We did not have a conference in the scientific terms in Russia like this. We had many educational events, and we do conduct them myself, but we have not yet conducted scientific events of the sort. And so, in our conversation with Alexander Sangurov, with Tatiana Vinogradova, as an initiative from the people, we they are the people who are pioneering the open budgeting in Russia, and we have decided to conduct a first event of its kind. And we were thinking that maybe we could gather together offline for the first time this year. Our anti-COVID measures are continuing to be implemented, and we're hoping next year to conduct the same event in an offline format. And if St. Petersburg is going to invite us over, we're going to do everything in order to truly conduct this conference in a live offline format. I would also like to underline the fact that we have invited, well, we didn't have a wide invitation base for this event. We didn't announce about this event to everybody. We did particular invitations to those people who are writing articles regarding the open budgets and about citizen participation in budgeting questions, people who have highlighted themselves as experts. And the only people who we try to involve are the experts in the various subjects of the various regions who are related to the subject and who have already shown themselves as notable experts in the field. I also want to say that the model of openness of budget that is now forming in the Russian Federation is not the only model that is available when the financial institutions are involved in the openness of the budgeting processes, who are popularizing the idea and the notion. We also have other models of openness of the budget. And I think the most vivid example is South Korea. The openness of the budget is open through the taxation information. Every citizen is able to see how much taxes they have paid, and basing on that, they are then able to make their decisions in terms of how to spend the money that has been collected from them. Of course, lately, the interest in the openness, it's becoming more of a PR, is slowly transferring into that, and not so much in scientific data. And we're hoping that this scientific conference and panel this year and next year is going to renew the interest to once again create an interest to the scientific approach to this, and will allow us to take these matters onto a new level. Now, basically, a couple of words regarding things that could be most interesting in the field of attracting citizens into this process, into the budgeting processes. Now, I want to say that we are very close to the matter of having citizens participate in the budgeting processes would be integrated with the sustainable development goals that has been set out by the UN in front of every country. And frequently we do forget about these goals. We forget about the SDGs being an agenda for the majority of countries in the world. And in this year, in April, we are expecting a thematical publication of the financial journal that is dedicated to open budgeting. And this is a very important step for us. We are counting on getting these sort of publications together regularly, maybe not only in the financial journal magazine, but this is a great experience overall, and the
Я бы
articles
хотел
that are collected in
проанонсировать
it are
еще и
interesting and
одну
fascinating.
важную.
I would also like to announce one other interesting and important event that we're going to conduct in September. We're expecting to launch an all of Russia conference on initiative budgeting. We are going to stream this event, and those who are going to have the opportunity to participate offline, we are going to invite you, because I think that this is an important tradition, an important event, and these all Russia conferences. This is an internal Russian conference that we think needs to be conducted regularly. And I would also like to remind you that next year, and our work on this panel, and Our work must be dedicated towards forming work groups that would later be able to develop the agendas of the sections of the future conference. And I would like us to not forget about this underlying thread of our conversations that we're going to have today and tomorrow. I would like us to form the work groups that are going to be working on the agendas of each of the sections because this has to be collective work. And that is the only way in which we will be able to create an interesting and serious event. Undoubtedly, we must also think about the things that we've forgotten about. And I already now see that we don't have enough financial literacy and budgeting literacy. This is something we have to add to the agenda for next year as well. And closing off my introductory word that I'm maybe dragging out a bit for too long, I would like to once again thank those who have created a serious input for the preparation of this panel. I would like to thank the scientific institute, the I would like to thank the Higher School of Economics, the Financial University of St. Petersburg, and I'm going to pass the word to Alexandra for her to name them properly. And of course, I would also like to thank the Faculty of Management of the St. Petersburg Economy Management Institute. And I would also like to allow a welcoming word from, hello, Alexei. I would like to pass the floor to Alexei Alexeyevich Korabelnikov, the chairman of the um, financial department of St. Petersburg's town hall, who has helped us over and over again in St. Petersburg. Alexei Alexeyevich, I pass the word to you. Thank you very much, Vladimir Vladimirovich. I hope that you can hear me well. Yes, we can hear you well. That is amazing. It is indeed a shame that this year we are in a format that we're not used to. I mean, okay, we've gotten used to it over the past year, but it's not a usual format for us per se. And as Vladimir Vladimirovich has noted, we do have a certain hope that next year we'll be able to gather live together and that we will not need to wait for an invitation from you don't need to wait for invitations from St. Petersburg. We're always happy to see you. If you need a formal invitation to attend, then you can say that this is me inviting all of you. We will be very happy to see each and every one of you who is involved with the questions of transparent budgeting and with open budgeting in St. Petersburg. We expect you to come to us at the end of this year or at the beginning of the next one. We find it very important to be an active member and an active participant of this process because in the city, we are trying to do as much as we can in order for these subjects to see continuous development. This has to be on our agenda. This has to constantly be in the area of our attention. And on our behalf, we do try to move forward. We do try to move towards studying the various practices existing in the various subjects of the Russian Federation and worldwide generally. For us, it is very important to be aware of everything that is taking place because we do have a certain understanding that the formats, the tools that are traditional, the things that we're used to employing are slowly losing their applicability. And we understand that we need to continue continuous development of the applied tools. In the traditional meaning of the word, we are used to preparing budgeting for the citizens as these pamphlets with many, many pages. We're used to do web pages with a huge amount of financial data. But I have a personal feeling that this is not enough. And undoubtedly, we do have to look for new tools. And now people have already gotten used to working in digital spaces. People have already gotten used to large corporations and even the government of the Russian Federation and the various governments of the various regions of the Russian Federation is starting to implement very targeted services that would be directed not generally at some portion of the public, but that would be directed at satisfying the needs of every particular person. And the correlating approaches need to be implemented in the context of the transparency of the budgeting systems. It's not enough to just give people general information. I think people now are more interested in how do the government structures in how do companies satisfy the needs of every particular person. Nowadays, almost nobody's interested in talking generally about the town or the city. Well, they're less interested in that now, and they're more interested in what is going to be happening exactly in the place where a person is used to live, is used to work, is used to just be. And we, responding to this challenge on our channel, are developing on our website, are developing an interactive map, and we're trying to relay the information regarding all the road maps, all the addresses that we have in order for a person looking for a particular address where a person lives, he would be able to find information regarding what is going to be happening on that territory in that area over the next 3 years. For example, what traffic lights are going to be installed, what trees are going to be planted, what facades of the houses are going to be repaired. And of course, we are just at the beginning of this journey. And of course, the information that we currently have on the map is just our first take at the task. But I'm certain that this is the direction we have to continue moving in, and we have to continue developing these services. Of course, we do understand that right now it is no longer enough to provide just general information regarding how much money we're spending on families with kids, how much money we're spending on pensioners, senior citizens, invalids, and disabled people. Now, a person wants to know what exactly they can receive in terms of a service from the government of Russia, from the government of a particular region. And in this sense, it is crucial for us to create services that would allow to satisfy the demand of every particular person. And in St. Petersburg, taking the unified map of a St. Petersburg's residents, we are trying to provide such a service. We're basing our responses to an input to a certain questions. The system gives out a number of support measures that every person who is on that portal can be privy to. On our side, we do understand that it is no longer enough to provide just the financial information. Everybody is interested in particular results of what exactly is going to be done using the budgeting money that are being allocated in all the various budgeting areas that is being dedicated by the Russian Federation. And so all the information that is required for the open data to be full and to be interesting, I think that this interest far outreaches the financial information that is traditional to our financial systems. And we need to integrate with other systems in order for us to be able to timely provide the information regarding the finances and the results that we're going to get with the use of the budgets. We understand that we do have a very different structure of people who live in our areas. We have very different residential structures, very different psychological um, sets of people, and they are all very diverse. And we do need to make sure that we find an approach to every one of them, picking the right tools for the job. There are people who are used to staying at home and who are just used to watching the TV. These kind of people need a certain type of content. There are other people who are very active in the city, in their lives of their cities, in the lives of their region, who are able and who are ready to attract the attention of the broader circles of the residents, attracting their attention towards solving certain issues. And to these sort of people, we need a completely different approach. We have the younger generation who right now is not ready to perceive large batches of information. And for them, it's enough to get just 3 or 4 sentences and a picture in the social media to just understand what the problem is and how to respond to it. And we have other kinds of people still. We have the more senior residents. We have people of the silver age who, on the contrary, need a very detailed analysis of the information using different terms that the ones that we are used to using in our professional community. We need to use simple words, simple examples that could be understood by the general public. And even right now, we see that we need to change. We need to change to respond to the world that is changing around us. and we need to try and get the right set of information out. And we do understand that right now these tools are in amplitude. We just need to make sure we identify the ones that are applicable to us. We need to apply them to the specific tasks at hand. We need to highlight the best practices that we have in the world and in Russia, and we need to make sure that we use them to their full potential. Systemic approaches, target advertisement, and we need to make sure that we employ these available tools. There is no need to invent a wheel here, and we just can take the best practices that we have, just adapting them to our conditions and context in order to make sure that this task of providing openness and transparency to the budget, making sure that this task is more achievable in the short term, not long term period. We, as like minded colleagues, as professionals who are deep within the subject, we are trying to bring something new to each process in order to be the leaders and the innovators. And I think that this opportunity for us to communicate, to share our ideas, is an amazing idea overall. And I do find it necessary to support this and to make sure this becomes a regular format. And so I'd like to wish all of you the best of luck and the best of success during this conference. I'd like to wish you all great discussions, and I'm certain that next year we are going to meet personally, offline, and we will have an opportunity to discuss all what we are discussing in our beautiful city regarding what could have been achieved and what we did achieve during this period. And once again, I wish all of you great health, great success, and interesting discussions. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much, Alexey Alexeyevich. You seem St. Petersburg that is slowly turning into the leader of the development of the processes of initiative budgeting of the Russian Federation, even in their introductory words, are able to give so much information on various topics and themes that it's worthy of attention. So, we do indeed consider you one of the experts and leaders, opinion of whose matters to all of us. And we do hope that St. Petersburg is going to continue to be the blacksmith of innovations. And we do hope that they are going to continue innovating in the citizen involvement in the budgeting processes. And now I would like to pass on the word to Alena Ivandisheva from the from the higher schools of economics from the Eastern Studies. So, uh, Alena Vandashova, the floor is yours. Colleagues, hello. Yes, thank you. I am certain that nobody is in doubt that the subject of this expert panel is truly important, and I think the amount of participants speaks for itself. Despite the fact that many people are tired of the online format, I'm still going to outline a number of theses that I consider to be important. And the inefficient spending of the budgeting finances causes sometimes destructive processes. And as a proof of that, we can see the amount of money that the Russian Federation loses on inefficient purchases and procurement. According to experts, these are trillions of rubles that are being lost. And this unfortunately leads to a larger social inequality, and this leads to lack of trust to the government institutions, to social tension. And as Vladimir has already noted, we need to make sure we're aligned with the ODG, with the 16th goal in particular, where the governments have taken it upon themselves to decrease the amount of corruption in all of its forms, where they have undertaken upon themselves to create efficient and transparent institutions on all levels. And last year, I've participated in a work group regarding how we can achieve the sustainable development goals. And we try to look at how well Russia is doing in achieving the 16th Sustainable Development Goal. And in terms of trying to introduce transparency and variability, it is a topic of our university conference that is being conducted by our faculty of the social sciences of Eastern Studies. And colleagues, we do invite you to our university as well. We can definitely look at trying to introduce participatory budgeting discussions there as well, because this is truly an important topic in it of itself. And Alexei, Karabelnikov has did say an important thing. Over the past decade, we have undertaken a lot of efforts in order to disclose the government and municipal finances, but these efforts are not enough because it's not enough to just publish the data. We need to make sure they're accessible via comfortable formats. We need to make sure that this data is used and understood by the citizens. We need to make sure that there is a constant monitoring from the side of the citizen community, and we need to make sure that the conditions for the participatory budgeting are met. And I think that it's important to know that we need to get the students and pupils involved into this. And we do have examples of international projects where even school kids are participating in this. And I know that in St. Petersburg, they have at least 3 schools that are participating in this. And we need to make sure that these practices are going to continue to be spread. And with the time, we are going to see misuse of this. And I would like to give you an outstanding example of what can public participation give. For example, a place where renovation was being done, the local citizens had tried to figure out how well the contract of the government contract is being fulfilled, and people just measured with a tape the trees that were being planted, and they figured out that instead of 3-year-old trees that have a wider trunks, where they had 2-year-old trees planted, which are just worse off, cheaper, and are worse off with trying to normalize and to adjust to the replanting process. And this simple process has allowed us to see that there were misuses found, and this allowed them to address the courts, and this allowed us to find this procurement illegal, which allowed us to more efficiently use the budgeting finances that we had, where this money was returned into the budget, and the people carrying out the task were forced to correct the situation. But regardless, this is an example that tells us that when people are interested in seeing the final result, when they're interested in looking at the details of what is happening in their own backyard, and as Alexei Karabelnikov has said, we do need to make sure we present this information in a format that is understood and in a format that is interesting even for the younger generation, for them to also take an active part in this process. Now, apart from this, I would also like to note a worrying tendency, a worrying trend. And of course, I'd like our development to go in a different direction. But right now, we are seeing that we have a trend to limiting the access to the publicly important information. And this concerns about the procurements of separate departments and separate ministries. And of course, we understand that there is a certain need to protect the government secrets, but there's a very fine line here. And we would like to make sure that this non transparent procurement would be brought down to a minimum, because this significantly reduces the opportunities for monitoring and the results of such limitations I've already listed. And so for me, the tasks that are outlined by the organizers and the hosts of this panel are very close, and I hope that we will be able to solve them jointly with the help of our great experts and with the help of the discussions of the important questions that are part of our agenda. Thank you very much, Alona Vandisheva, for this great introductory word. And I would like to pass the word and the floor to the Dean of the Management of the St. Petersburg Public Administration University of Management Technologies, to Elena Yushakova. Your microphone is not yet turned on. You need to turn on your microphone. Please press the button with the microphone. There we go. Okay, there we go. Yes, good day, dear guests. Good day, colleagues. On behalf of the University of the Management of Technologies and Economy, I'd like to welcome you all. Our university is the biggest non-government university in the northwest region of Russia, where we have people from abroad, from all the regions of the Russian Federation. And now for over 30 years, we're working with the methodical direction of the Russian Academy of Sciences. And we have over 190 various educational programs, starting from college, ending to doctorates. And right now, one of the most interesting programs is the programs for government management. and municipal management. And within this program, we are teaching current government workers who are constantly working with the various municipal government bodies, and we're helping them carry out work that is connected with solving the issues of both municipalities and regions. Within the conference, we are going to be discussing the problems are that we are facing today. And the transparency of the budgeting and the citizen participation in solving the budgeting and the management of budgets, we consider this to be an important and necessary step in order to respond to the challenges of our current times. So developing new tools, new mechanisms in order to get the citizens on board with the process, which helps us to create more efficient budgeting solutions based on transparent information, is a task that we consider to be especially important. And so I would like to wish all of us for our unified the so for our efforts to combine, we'd like to make sure that we are able to attract more attention to this, and we'd like to make sure that we get people on board. And now it is time to get to the work of the first section. But before this, they've asked us for a short pause for a technical announcement. If we do need this, okay, let us give some time to the technical announcement. Okay, good day, colleagues. The information for the speakers, please. We ask you on the lower panel of tools, we'd like to ask you to select the translation, which allows you to listen to translation either in English or in Russian.
Select translation icon on the toolbar and click on the English.
Спасибо, спасибо, Валерия.
Okay, Valerie, thank you very much. And right now, we're very punctual today. So I would like the tradition for our panel work to be maintained, and we have agreed to the fact that we give the presenters 20 minutes each, and we'd like you to respect that timeline. And I'd like to say just a couple of words. I just can't hold myself, and I have to make sure I mention this. Even though I have mentioned this in passing in my introductory word, nevertheless, I think that it's important to remind people about this. Now, the processes of the transparency of budgeting tools in Russian Federation already has a certain history. And now, what I'm saying right now, can our people hear us in all languages? Yes, we can hear you in all languages. Thank you. Okay. Now, the first project that was dedicated to the transparency of budgeting in the regions of the Russian Federation was the work that has been conducted by the Strategy Center. And this work has seen leaders take part. Alexander Sungurov and Tatiana Vinogradova were two leaders and people who participated in the first openness budgeting projects in the Russian Federation. So we only think it's just to give people the word who have pioneered this process in the Russian Federation. And Tatiana, I'm not going to introduce you separately, but I find it very pleasant, and I'm very happy that in the agenda and in the topics that are dedicated to the transparency of the budgeting, we do have an opportunity, thanks to your presentations, to broaden our agenda. And the sharing about the community that can work on the transparency budgeting is something that is very important to us. It is even a key issue. Who is the community who hears this issue? Who understands it and who is ready to move this forward? And now I pass the word to the professor of the higher schools of economics of St. Petersburg and the president of the Strategy Center to Vyacheslav Yurievich Sungurov. Thank you, Vladimir Vladimirovich. We all know each other here, and I'm happy to see that we have another partner. We have Chugunov here as well. He's smiling over here, and we were talking about an electronic participation, and I'm very happy to see this, and to other colleagues that maybe I don't see here. So now I'm moving on to the presentation, and I'm going to try and make sure I uphold the time. Okay, my presentation has loaded. I just want to check. Colleagues, can you see this? Okay, then let us start.
Я обозначил роль
So
профессионального
I'll speak of the role of the professional community, but it will be broader. It will be broader than that. And the specific content, this is what I'll be speaking of. Public budgeting is a form of civic activity, which relates to the name of our panel today, ideology of public participation. I'll speak of the experience Strategies Center experience. I'll speak of it briefly, but I think it's important to mention. And regarding the modern Russian practices of public fiscal practices, with that emphasis on dangers of imitation and other issues. Public budgeting as form of civic participation. First of all, I'd like to remind you of the foundation. There are two forms of democracy. It's electoral democracy, where the citizens choose their representatives for heads of administration, and they make no decisions after that. As it was said by Russian philosopher Lenin, one of our favorite philosophers of our president, I said in England, people have voted once every 4 years, and it doesn't even get close to democracy after that. He spoke of electoral democracy, but there's a second form of democracy, participative democracy, when there are various forms of influencing political decisions for the citizens. We're talking about policy here, not politics. And famous scientist John Keane often called monitoring democracy, because it's not only monitoring, it's also participation, but it's founded on that notion. So now to briefly about the kinds of public involvement, engagement. First of all, it's individual forms, it's complaints and addressing the authorities, and collective addresses, petitions that were in place in the USSR. Any authority is interested in feedback, no matter how authoritative. And since feedback provides information in what the lower level officials' performance, so that was paid attention to. Collective addresses is something different. It's just something that you cannot ignore, especially if it's signed by important people. For instance, like there was this known petition against Stalin rehabilitation that was in 1966, 1967. Sakharov, it was we've celebrated his 100th anniversary last year, and the next level has to do with interactive connection. It's public discussion of projects and decrees by the authorities. It could be public hearings or comedy hearings, and we'll speak of those public hearings at most, because participating in fiscal process is being present in the discussions, in budget discussions. But there are other forms that are also important. Of various consultation councils and public chambers that should help to organize all of these things. But right away, I'd like to note that at one of the previous conferences, online webinars that conducted by Vladimir Vladimirovich, people from the regions, the colleagues said that we put things together, but there's no one to interact with. Those chambers are not working. They're not. The councils are not interested. So that's the issue, and it's very important. I'll speak of it more later. And another crucial form of participation is public control of the authority activities, because certain functions are passed to certain structures that are not public or quasi-public. But our emphasis here today is public hearings, public discussions. But they're especially effective when there's an alternative solution offered by the authorities. So who can offer such alternatives? First of all, it's the expert community, and it's fair for any public hearing, especially when it comes to fiscal discussions. So here we enter a very interesting point that civil initiative and civil participation is impossible without. It's possible, but is a lot less effective without experts, without the participation of expert community. So this triangle: authorities, civil societies, and expert communities. It's very important for our project. First of all, because expert knowledge is very important here, and we will speak of it more later about how they should be represented in various directions. Moving on. And here, to draw the line on my words of introduction, I'd like to remind you of something many of you know: the levels of public participation that was proposed by Sherry Arnstein in 1969. Soon we'll be celebrating the Jubilee. She established levels of public participation. It's manipulation. At the bottom, therapy is when people feel like they are heard. That's how it was when I was a deputy, where I would see citizens and people. One man told me, "Well, thank you, Sam, for listening. At least someone listened to me." And then there's informing, and that was always back in the Soviet Union. And then consultations, considering opinions, and considering opinions. And here it's very important how formal the control of the opinions is, because it never said that the opinions should be considered. But if it's not, if these opinions are not considered, at least the authorities should say that, explain the reason. You can just ignore these things. And there were such cases, but we don't have the time for it now. And then there's partnership. That's when we talk about delegating authorities, and we have examples like that. For instance, like uh, it had, there was an assessment for higher education institutions. But civic management, it's a dream for most countries, but Russia has a long way to go for that. But it's an advanced stage for all the countries. And so the people that know the basics, understand where the absence of with the absence of participation, where the symbolic participation, and where there's real opportunities to influence the decisions and control them in a way. Public opinion should not be considered in a positive way necessarily, but if they're not considered, at least people need the explanation. That's very important. And and now we'll speak of the strategy implementation experience. So first of all, what is it? It's a public organization created in 1993 by a group of land council in 1990s to foster the development of civil society and responsible authorities. And it was a thought factory and a public policy center. In 1998, with the support of Ford Foundation, and with the support of other foundation, the center started working on urban dwellers on the way to collaboration, affecting the objective is development of NGOs when it comes to fiscal budgeting issues, and then applying the experience of other regions in Russia. Right away, I'd like to say that we were based ourselves uh, on the interaction with the financial committee, because there were a lot of people from St. Petersburg Council. It was headed by Artemiev before he moved to Moscow. So, and when we approached Sergei and then told him that we need to have an adapted version of the budget, they told us that yet we have it already, and they showed us a wonderful brochure with the illustrations and graphs and diagrams about how to put together a budget. It was just like great. But what do you think? What do you think the language it was published in? It was published in English. It was published in English because it was published for a presentation to international financial organizations and others to show that everything is open. Well, asked me, did you publish in Russian? And asked me, what for? So that's an important, that's a very important question. Well, do you have the text? And at that point, we had money to publish it. So that's the first publication of the budget. It was a joint project. It was developed by a financial committee, but because it wasn't published because they had no reason to. And we published it together with our partner project. It's not because people are bad. People are good, but they're just this just logic that we're only working for the foreign customer, for the foreign investor. That was a long time ago. It doesn't relate to the current committee, but this story, but it's history and something we need to understand. And such things can also take place in other regions as well. The key directions of the program. First of all, it's a educational module, and it's also very important because people need to get rid of the fears related to fiscal issues, and methodical support for the process, and implementation of global transparency standards by collaborating with financial committee members, and by taking part in international public budgeting project, and also preparation and um, public hearings with expert communities. Educational module. Over the 3 years for the there were about 22 training seminars conducted, anywhere from 1 to 6 days. So it's 44 days of training, a lot of hours. Uh, 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 there was a core NGO community and authority representatives that have conducted public hearings, analyzed budgets, analyzed transparency in each of the project regions. Uh, so uh, methodical support. Actually, there was an interesting thing with that development of independent practical fiscal analysis by involving academicians from academic of science institutions, conducting special seminar to training seminars, publications of development, publication of manuals. So a common language was found. Another little example of some books that were published were six books published, practical. It's about 2,000 pages, and most of these books are available on the site. Implementation of global standards with the help of committee members. One of the results is one of the vice head of the financial committee at the time, Sergei Vasilyevich Domin, wrote a book, Budget for Everyone. It was published in 2001. The program was conducted with the International Fiscal Transparency Project. So after took part in conferences in Washington, Cape Town, and Bombay, and a perception of transparency in the global community. And they also understand that with our fiscal project, international fiscal projects, they can understand as experts, they can learn a lot. And that's how they become real participants in the process, and they're not afraid of public participation. Preparation and organization of public hearings. So those are the basic regions: St. Petersburg, Pskov region, Karelia, Murmansk region, Sakhalin region, Samar region, that became the centers of dissemination as much as possible of such information. And today, there is the program site is supported. I checked it this morning. It's transparentbudget.ru. There are a lot of methodical materials to be found there. So here's a little example. It's a book published in 1999, a brochure. You can see introduction by Vinogradova, head of the project. Boris Vishnevsky, back then he was a part of the committee he was part of the fiscal committee. Zamyatin, together with a famed economist Blachman, who will be speaking today. Alexander Nizdur was also a colleague of ours. Shevchuk is a representative of the Ecological Foundation. Antoniuk and Pavel Druzhinin, fiscal analysis from Petrozavodsk, our partner economist from Karelia. Implementation of standards. That's and at our symposium, we had some program participants. Tatiana Vinogradova will be speaking. She's the head of the program. I only led it for the first year. Zamyatin, expert, Mirolia Mahmutova, and Katarina Ott from Croatia. So thank you for the idea of putting this together, because very important, and we will continue working together. And to draw the line, I'd like to say current practice of fiscal practices in Russia, issues of imitation. So there's a clear lack of training seminars for NGO leaders, because to alleviate the concerns that they may misunderstand or not understand is very important. Weak callings, connections between the NGO leaders and expert community. There's an absence of common language. There were some cases when even the municipalities wanted to do some trainings. based on the results of the work by Alina Dmitrieva, who's also a participant of our forum. But they refused because the prices that were offered by the only expert center were too high, and there were no other alternatives. There are various technologies of participation of the. So once we've dealt with this issue, we will face the issue with other forms of public participation. When we have public chambers and other structures that support all of it are not interested because they're actually interested in something else. For instance, last year we've published our collective monography where we can see the public chambers and where we discussed the issue of mediation, imitation. We analyzed it in 4 regions, and of course, imitation was present on various levels. That's one of the issues. Um, Oftentimes, these public chambers become either clubs for vice governors of various generations, as it's no longer so, but that was our public chamber, St. Pete, or uh, if they're the or it can be area of manifestation of conflict of interest between the authorities, like in Vladimir. There was a conflict between a communist and United representatives. Uh, so people, well, just representatives, war between representatives of various clans. But sometimes, due to their activity, they became real mediators between the authorities and the community. And it's important to understand that it's a very important tool that should develop in the future. Another great example uh, of the work of public hearings is how they're put together. As you will note, as it happened with public hearings on Ochto Center. As it turned out, journalists have learned that the vast majority of the participants of the hearings that supported the construction were extras, were film studio actors who were paid 800 rubles a day for shooting. But this time it wasn't a film shooting; it was something else. But of course, the effect of these hearings was not. So this building was moved to another place, and it's actually making. I think it's actually making it look better. So some people don't like it still. And the other thing that makes it things different is making this hearings online. For instance, a lot of hearings are held in St. Pete. The hearings are held online even prior to COVID, and that means it's not a real discussion. It's like you order something and then we face a lot of issues for creating real discussions, discussion platforms. It takes a lot of work. And finally, I think I'm actually on time here. I'd like to remind you. I'd like once again to speak of the levels of public participation that we're speaking of today. And it's very important to understand that these levels are known by many of our partners, and it's very important. It's very important. It's very important to have expert participation that find a common language, and it's a common language not only with the authorities but also with civic organizations. It's not only our problem. We're looking at a harmonious solution when it comes to consultations, governance. How should the opinions of activists should be represented. Activists are represented as expert opinions and lobbying groups, but they also should be present. In order to find the common language and make it so that the experts are not hired people with high rates, but real participants of the process with the feeling of civil responsibility that can pass on the knowledge to NGOs that can also, to a certain degree, become experts with understanding of various points of view, and once again, then construct a common dialogue with authority representatives, like the participants we're seeing today here. Korabelnikov doesn't need a common language, but in the regions, we need the people that would that we need to work with the people that are not ready for this, to work with the people that are not ready for this dialogue, and that's what we need the experts community to serve as a moderator, as a mediator, so we have as little we have as little imitation, as much mediation as possible. I think I will draw a line on that. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Alexander Yurich. Thank you so much for the wonderful speech, and thank you for reminding us of very important and very relevant episodes of the work that you do. I'm very happy that none of it is lost, that it's still accessible. But literally, recently I ran across a few quite curious publications that's regarding uh, independent, practical fiscal analysis. It turns out that the actual idea has a long history, and this long history has to do with the fact that neither politician, with actually not politicians, but experts wrote analytical materials that had to do with fiscal, with budgeting issues in the Russian Empire back during uh, the first, second, third, and fourth state Duma. It was a wonderful genre where our prominent economists would write texts, and right now it's all given up to journalists, and there isn't so much analysis there. But you know the need for such analysis is in place, and both in scholarly and analytical for deeper understanding of the process. I think it's very important, and so now. So now we have a uh, so we have this we have a choice now. I can we can have we can do I can allow time for one or two questions because we'll have we will have some special time for our speakers later. So if I don't see any raised hands now,
проявленного желания, мы переходим тогда сразу
or
к следующему докладу.
we can move on to the next paper, or you can post your questions in the chat, and I'll try to. Yeah, that's a very good decision. Just in order to save a little time, I will follow the chat. So once we see, if I see any questions, I can maybe provide an opportunity to have them answered. Allow me to to I'd like to pass the floor to Tatiana Ivanovna Vinogradova, head of fiscal transparency program. Alexander Yurich mentioned expert of international fiscal partnership, and that's a very important function that Tatiana has been serving for a long time. Assessing the efforts of the Russian Federation in the direction, and as you also Tatiana, I'd like to pass the floor to you.
Thank you very much, Vladimir
Thank you so much,
Vladimirovich.
Vladimir Vladimirovich.
I'm very happy to be presenting on our international panel today that you've organized. I'm very happy to see so many participants. And once again, hello. Now, while processing the experience of the transparency of the budgeting in Russia, comparing with other countries, I would like to present the initiative for open budget of the International Budget Partnership and the evaluation of the transparency of the Russian federal budget and the public participation from 2006 to 2019. For those of you who know, this international budget partnership with lawyers and analytics, its mission is to make sure that the government will be a responsible mediator for the government funds. And the mission is to make sure that the citizens do participate in open and inclusive budgeting processes. International budget partnership works with a number of various partners, including the organizations of citizen communities, governments, international organizations, with the World Bank, and with private companies in over 120 countries worldwide. Now, during my presentation, I would like to especially note the methodology, how they evaluate things, and I would like to also present the results that have been received in 2019, also to show the Russia's rating, to show the dynamics and how it changed since 2006, and to also highlight the recommendations that were given to the Ministry of Finance and to the Federal Council, and to also share a number of other thoughts regarding how we can improve our budgeting processes. Now, the overview of open budgeting is the only open, transparent evaluation of how budget is being used. And it evaluates the transparency in terms of how the budgeting is spent, the monitoring, and the participatory capacities of citizens. Now, it shows the transparency of 8 key budgeting documents and how much information those documents contain, which have to be in public access, which must not only be available through separate consultants or experts, but which should be publicly available on government websites. Now, this shows us the opportunity of citizen participations on each of the levels. A lot of these questions are based on the codex of the World Bank, of the PEFA, of the OECD, of the Lima Declaration and TOSA, and many of the countries and many of that are leading it were chosen because we had strong partners in those countries that could help the organization of the citizen community. But now many countries want to join the process of being part of this index. For example, Uzbekistan, it's in the short waiting list and it wants to join this index. Panama wants to join after the scandal with the Panama Papers leak. The last country in the Latin country, which is not part of it, has also applied to be part of this index. Now, the participation of the countries in this budgeting thing, it's a great note that people are prepared to be more open in terms of their budgeting to their citizens. Now, the index is part of the UN documents. It's something that the Ministry of Finance also relates to. It is respected and a great methodology. And this has been done very diligently. This is not the index of experts' perception. The basing of this index is a scientific method. And then all the answers are always separately analyzed by a financial expert, and at the end are sent to be reviewed by the governments of the respective countries that are evaluating them. So, for example, in 2019, there were 117 countries participating, and in 94 of these countries, the Ministry of Finance were reviewing this index and sending their responses to the index. And it is this process that takes 18 months and can only be carried out only once per 2 years. And for example, the answer regarding the openness of the budget in 2019 that was presented in the spring of 2020, it was based on the documents that were available up until 31st of December 2018. Now, in the survey, there are 128 very open questions. Out of them, 45 questions, the ones that are being evaluated, 109 questions are evaluating the transparency index. 18 questions concern the participation of the citizen community, and 20 questions concern the legal bodies and the audit bodies. There are 23 additional questions, but they're to do with budgeting documents and how the finances are being managed. They're not being used to evaluate the index, but they're just they're just helping the evaluations make up the final decision and are referential at best. On the map that you can see on the slide right now, you can see how transparent the budgets are. Here we have 2019 results reflected. With the dark green, you can see the countries that are giving a wide range of information, ranging from 81 to 100 rating. The light green countries are the countries that are allowing a lot of information to be transparent. And yellow are the countries that are providing limited amount of information regarding budgeting, red minimal, and brown, where the countries are either not providing any information regarding budgeting. So it's something that gets marked between 0 and 20. Despite the results that have been achieved over the years, the current transparency index averagely on the world are fairly limited. The global transparency index of the budgets worldwide is 45 out of 100. The percentage of the countries that were unable to provide a sufficient level of documentation regarding documents are 74%. 1 out of 6 countries' key budgeting documents are not available to the wider public. Now, just out of interest, one of the worst countries according to this index are the Comorian Islands, Venezuela, and Yemen. None of these countries publish any key documentation regarding budgeting on their sites. Now, 61% and higher in transparency, as can be seen in this diagram. It is the green side. We have Russia here on 74. It shows that the country publishes enough information in order to allow proper debate on the budgeting. In 2019, Russia had an index of 74 out of 100, and Russia is number 14 out of 117 countries worldwide. Now, let us look at the values of Russia in dynamics. In 2006, when this index was first started, Russia had 47 out of 100. And in 2019, we see 74. We see Russia go up in 27 points. And the largest jump happened from 2010 to 2012. Over more than 12 points, 14 points. Financial people know, but maybe not all the participants know. First of all, Russia started publishing its budgeting for the citizen. It improved the quality of the documents that were attached to the projects of the budgeting, and they became publicly available. And during this period of time, the sustainable programs for the budgeting were improved in Russia, and the management of the government finances and the management of the fiscal markets. We had a new 1.3 index introduced, the Openness Index, which is now being taken into account from the International Budgeting Partnership. Now here, we can see how the Russia was providing 8 key budgeting tools based on year, starting from 2010, when we can see it rise to 60, starting from 2010, and since 2012, we have seen missed due dates on publishing the budgeting for the governments. Also, we had not full semi-annual reviews, and then the reduction of the index we have seen because the general budgeting ideas were not timely published. This was then rectified in 2019, but the index still remained on 74 because we have seen a reduction in the amount of information that is being provided in the semi-annual report, which we can see noted in the 6-month review. Now, let us get closer to the topic of our discussion now, the index on citizen participation, and this is being evaluated for 2019. The index of openness evaluates how the citizens take part in the budgeting based on the fiscal transparency initiative, and we're going to have a separate report on this today. The experts are evaluating the ability of citizens to officially participate, which are provided to separate citizens and to organizations that allow them to correlate and to interact with the various government entities in forming their budgets. So, for example, if our organizational body inside the government directed a letter to another organizational body inside the government, is not considered a publication in community and citizen participation. We have 22 out of 100, and we want to say that it's not the lowest. We had 0 in many countries, and of course we have like Iraq, China, Lebanon, Myanmar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey. Even Turkey has 0 citizen participation on a federal level. 2.4 level out of 100 is something that can be seen in Hungary, in Serbia, and the highest participation is, for example, the UK, where we have 61 out of 100, South Korea, 61 out of 100, and New Zealand, 54 out of 100. Now, regarding the different stages of the budgeting process, the most capacities for participation in budgeting in Russia is provided by the accounting panel. The executive branch allows people to participate for 33 out of 100 because we have the parliament hearings, we have various deans of various universities, from the RANHIGs, from the MSU, from the HSE, from the Ross organization, and this format of participation gets one of the highest marks, with 33 out of 100. Now, regarding the execution of the budgeting, we have no opportunities with a 0 out of 100. Now, the parliamentary overview is 83 from the 83 from the legislative, and 89 from the audit changes, and this gives us an average of 85 out of 100 in terms of monitoring the budget. And I would like to thank the Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation for its professional and how well-meaning and how open it interacts with the bodies preparing this index. Of course, when this was originally projected in the 90s, this was not planned for. Of course, now Ministry of the Finance is reviewing the survey before the final evaluation being done. During the work, the employees of the Ministry of Finance help the index workers to find the right numbers and to find the right metrics. And of course, this helps them in their reviews. Now, the recommendations with the Ministry of Finance regarding public participations are, first of all, concerning the public participation. They intend to create pilot projects for monitoring of the budgeting execution, either by citizens or by organizations of citizen communities, and to actively interact with the socially vulnerable groups of population and with communities that are underrepresented, either directly or through public organizations that represent them. The Federal Council could, of course, also be more active in their interaction with the government, with the citizens when budgeting. And we have been given recommendations, first of all, to introduce legislation that would allow any representative of the wider public or any public organization to be able to speak on the budgeting processes before that budget is being approved, or to allow these representatives to present during the hearings on audits. Generally, for the increase of the level of public participation, other opportunities can also be implemented. In particularly, we can give more opportunities for the overview of the audit. We can also organize an opportunity to help in the checks that are being organized by the council. We can also take into account more topics when interacting with the citizens. And as is being underlined in many countries, we can increase the amount of feedback that is being given. We can give the. I would also like to add that the implementation of initiative budgeting on the national level can improve our index in the open budgeting index, but there are certain conditions in order for this increase to become possible. And the answers to the next questions are going to influence this. How much of the budget is going to be covered by the initiative budgeting, and what expenditures is it going to be executed on? Is the amount of information that is provided to the citizen before their participation of the budget going to increase? Are any specific steps going to be undertaken to include the underrepresented communities into this budgeting mechanism? As a conclusion, I would like to say the following. The review of the openness of the budget is only one of the projects of the International Budget Partnership. As Warren Kravchuk noted recently, the director, he said that our work is aimed at making sure that the government budgets are not only open, but for them to be invested into improving the life of the poorest and the most vulnerable sectors of the population. And we are currently talking about the openness of the budgeting. Today, it is well established that the fundamental threats to sustainable economic growth and in the battle against poverty is the change of climate and the degradation of the environment. So, in order to continue experimenting with budgeting initiatives, I would like to underline one of the pressing directions of budgeting reforms is the green reform or the ecological reform of budgeting, where we are going to be seeing more of this presented today and tomorrow. And it is also worthy of note that the budgeting are central in government's actions in combating the economic crisis and the coronavirus crisis pandemic. And we've seen this. We have had a lot of discussion regarding the steps that were undertaken. And of course, crisis requires quick measures, but nevertheless, we need transparency and we need public activity and public involvement in this in order to meet the goals of budgeting transparency. Thank you very much for your attention. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tatiana Ivan. There is a question for you. For us to not come back to this later, maybe I'll ask you it now. The question is as follows. Can you please advise why is this evaluation of the citizens' participation given by the accounting council? Well, you can go to the website of the auditing chamber and you can look at its audits. When the auditing chamber starts a new audit, it uses the input of the people who are using the website to interact with it. And this opportunity that is provided by the auditing chamber, that it provides to the citizens in order for them to be included in the agenda of the audits that are being conducted. So if I'm to be brief to answer your question, that is why. And also the reports. Apart from that, when I was monitoring this, I was looking at the auditing chamber reports, and in their reports, they always have a reference to what audits were started with the participation of citizens, of communities, of public organizations. So they're trying to see what are the most pressing issues where people want an audit federally. So apart from their own plan that they have on audits, they're also adding in the audits that are pressing for the general public, collecting this information using the feedback on their website and public surveys. Okay, thank you very much. There is one more question from Olga Ivanovna to my favor regarding the initiative budgeting. How can it be taken into account into the rating? But let us perhaps leave this question for a later discussion because I believe it requires a more expanded response. I can give you a short response. I want them to get a better response. I understand why she is confused. I would just like to direct Olga Ivanovna's attention that I have said that the evaluation of the international budgeting partnership only concerns the national level. And so only the national level initiatives impact that evaluation. That is the case, but nevertheless, I think a short question does not suffice here. And I think that this needs to be answered much more openly and expandedly. So we are going to come back to this question during our discussion later on. So we are concluding the presentations of this section. And apart from this, we have also allowed everybody who has registered to note their presentation topic. And we have an entire array of people who have signed up for these presentations. And I would also like us to come to terms in order for us to stick to our agenda and to our timeline. The presentations that have signed up, I am ready to give you 10 minutes for your presentation for those who have signed up. And for those who have not registered in advance, you will also have an opportunity to later pop in with your comments, with your vision, but within 5-minute segments. And I would like for you to make sure you uphold this timing. And taking this into account, I would like to move on. And one more important addition. It turns out that even in the presentations that we have already heard, a lot of the subjects that you are talking about are citizen participations. And we have a separate section for citizen participation, but today the transparency questions can hardly be separated from citizen participations. And so in the presentations, we've already heard this over and over again. And I see that in our further presentations, we are also going to be coming back to this topic. But nevertheless, I would like to once again remind you the name of our first sections. These are the challenges and how we can improve the transparency of the budget. What way of development can the openness and transparency of the budgets can go in Russia and worldwide generally? from the practices that we currently know, from the methodologies that are already
Обсуждений.
implied. And I
Значит,
think that
вот,
finding out and looking into these possibilities of development are the task of this section. And the presentations were grouped in the following manner. We had an opportunity to sign up in a certain sections and a number of people who have signed up for different sections, but those topics which were closest to our first sections, we have just moved them into this section in the beginning of our day. And I'd just like to give you a heads up for Margarita Zamyatina that her presentation was moved to the first section, and to Mirena Mahmudova. She has also been moved to the first section. So not right away. You still have a little time before you present. There are a couple of presentations before you, but nevertheless, I think that I had to give you a heads up about this. And now, allow me to give the word to Yuri Bilausov, to the head of the Research Institute of the Ministry of the Finance of the Russian Federation. And he would like to talk about the participation of citizens in the budgeting processes in the digital era. Okay, the floor is yours. Yes, thank you very much. I would like to direct our colleagues' attention at how digitalization can influence the openness of the budget and how it can influence the participation of the citizens in the budgeting process. Of course, digitalization in the 21st century is skyrocketing and it affects many areas, including finances. Finances are seeing some revolutionary changes. Let us just compare this to what has been happening in the beginning of the 21st century. 20 years ago, we're not even talking about online or mobile banking. This only came to be later. Now, if 20 years ago somebody would have told me that we're going to see a bank development which has no physical offices, but we see banks that are developing like that today, like the Tinkoff Bank. Even 10 or 12 years ago, we have seen the Bitcoin create. Today, the Bitcoin capitalization market cap is even bigger than the entire capitalization of the ruble. We have over 2 trillion cryptocurrencies market cap as of yesterday. And right now, let us ask ourselves, how did the digitalization affect the government financials? Well, it almost didn't. So for 20 years, we have not seen changes. Well, okay, no, we did see changes. We've seen no results. But the changes that we see that sooner or later are going to impact and are going to impact significantly. So we are seeing cumulative change, and sooner or later, the amount of changes is going to turn from quantity into quality. So, what do I mean when I say that? I'm going to focus on 2 issues. First issue, or first point, is a point where I would like to make 2 very questionable forecasts, very ambiguous ones. But first point, let us now look at how the budgeting takes place, how we're having an acceptance reached in our budgeting, how people accept our budget. Well, generally, the executive branch of power prepares the budgeting, then passes on to the legislative branch, and our representatives confirm the budget. First question, why is this done by our representatives? Well, the answer is simple, because our representatives are representing the citizens, because we live in a world where almost all the countries have chosen electoral democracy, representative democracy as their leading form, and as citizen representatives, they accept the budgeting. Okay, it's hard to imagine it go differently. Now let's look at the budget of Moscow. Can citizens impact this? In Moscow, we have around 10 million citizens with voting rights. It's impossible to get them all together to conduct a referendum. Well, you can imagine it's such an enormous process that is very expensive and very difficult. The budget is accepted by the representatives. Right now, I have a question, maybe to all of you. On your phone, do you have a fingerprint scanner? Well, some of you do, some of you maybe don't, most of you probably do. But let's look at it this way. In 5 or 10 years, I think that this is going to be something that is going to be on every phone. And this is a great way to identify a citizen. can we, let's say, using this identification of citizens to conduct a referendum? Yes, almost every day, because we no longer need significant preparation like we do right now, where we would have various electoral committees. If the citizens are able to accept the budget by themselves, then why do we need the representatives? What is the point of representatives if the citizens can vote for the budget by themselves? A citizen no longer needs a representative. So the citizens would be able to directly vote for the budget. And if we don't need a representative, then what is the role of this representative? I think that this question is going to be more and more pressing over the years. Of course, this can be refuted. To this, you can say that representatives are important because they're more qualified than an average citizen. They understand what they're doing. Well, of course, this can be true in the majority of cases, but representatives have different issues. Do the representatives truly represent the interests of an average citizen? This is a question that is surprisingly difficult to answer. It is very questionable and ambiguous. Recently, the Levada Center has conducted a public survey asking the citizens regarding what is their attitude towards the governments. And so the activities of the representatives is approved only by 8% of the respondents to the survey, meaning that almost nobody approves of what they're doing. Which is why my forecast is that in 20 years, the process of budgeting is going to be taking place without legal representatives. The citizens are going to be accepting the budgeting by themselves, and this is the participation of citizens that is possible, that could be there. And I don't want to be voting for direct democracy here. Of course, we understand that direct budgeting, accepting by the government, by the citizen, is a direct thing. And we understand direct democracy is not as easy. We have populism issues, and California, in its example, shows that we have issues with direct democracy. So maybe we'll have not a direct democracy, maybe we'll have some limitations. Maybe in budgeting, we'll only allow only a select group of citizens voting who have a education that reflects their ability to understand it. So we will probably put up some barrier or some limitation or some cutoff criteria. But overall, I don't see any point for representatives to be involved in accepting budgets in 20 years. Now, my second forecast. Now, we're going to go back a little. The question of budget planning. We have talked about that the project of the budget is being carried out by the Ministry of Finance. Now, why Ministry of Finance? In many of the books, you can find the answer to this. There, everybody writes that only the Ministry of Finance contains the information that is required for the decision to be made. Now, this is something that I think we need to look into with more detail. Yesterday, this was true. Is this true today? Well, today, a lot of information is publicly available. Tomorrow, this information is going to be even more publicly available. We have big data, which is developing, data centers popping up left, right, and center. Everything is growing and developing, and we have enough information. Even right now, regarding the budget incomes, any person can forecast the amount of income that the budget is going to receive, as well as the financial ministry, sometimes even better. Tomorrow, we're going to see even more data. But here, we must, of course, take into account the specifics of the budgeting process so that the Ministry of Finance would not only be planning the Ministry of Finance would not also be planning it. We need to simplify it, but it needs to be simplified anyway. For example, we need to just get rid of the ridiculous amount of subsidies that currently exists. And I think everybody agrees with this and everybody is talking about this, but we're seeing a growing amount of subsidies that we're doing, not a reduction in them, which is ridiculous. So if we are able to order the budgeting process, then the Ministry of Finance is no longer necessarily the only one who is going to be doing this. And budgeting should not only be something that is done only in one example. I think that experts should be involved with this. And I'm forecasting that we're going to see the political parties involved in budget planning. And the budgets are going to be put up the budgets that are going to be put up for vote are not only going to be in one example, we're going to see a number of different budgets up for vote. For this, we need open data. And today, we need to think about what open data do we need. Then let us ask the question. I understand this question is ambiguous, but what data should be published in order for a political party, for example, to be able to plan the budget accordingly? The the political parties can be selecting the people who would be participating in order to make sure they're qualified. But I think that in any way, this is good. If we see a competition of different budgets, it's going to be good. Why do we only have one budget project? Why don't we have a number of them? And why don't we let people choose which one they like more? So these are 2 points that I've noted. Of course, digitalization is going to also lead to a lot of, let's put it this way, to a lot of influence in all other areas of life and management and government. But these are 2 important points, and I hope that I made my time. Is it going to come true or not? Well, let us come back to this in 20 years. Hope we stay alive until then. It's a questionable forecast, but thank you very much for your attention. Yes, you've set up a very, very good. Uh, you set a very high bar. Well, we'll try. Thank you very much. I would like to comment what you have just said. A lot of these questions are up for discussion, and I'm not sure that I'm not the only one who'd like to engage in this discussion, because truly the questions of digitalization in terms of budgeting decisions, this is not a new discussion. And countries that have moved further along in this implementation, including the capacity of a citizen to influence the decisions that are undertaken by the representatives. I think Iceland has truly unique experience in this regard. We see public organizations create a system which allows the representatives to see how many citizens are voting for and against out of those who have connected to the application. Of course, this is not direct voting, but it's a small step towards this voting. And there are a number of other incredibly interesting cases, but I suggest we move all this to the discussion phase of our conference, and let's move on. And our next speaker, we have Svetlana Salyanikova, our long-term partner on working with openness on budgeting information and openness of budgeting data. Svetlana Petrovna, is she here? I can't see her, and I can't see her turning on her microphone. Svetlana Petrovna, are you with us? I've heard some sounds, but I'm not sure that's her. Okay, fair enough. Then for us not to waste time, we'll move Svetlana Petrovna to later if she's not ready right now. Then I'd like to give the next presenter the word, Olga Timofeeva, the research, the dean of the University of Finance with the government of the Russian Federation. She wants to talk about the regions on openness of the budgeting in terms of allowing more transparency for regions. Olga, the floor is yours.
Ольга Ивановна с нами переписывалась, но вот
Здравствуйте,
Olga
уважаемые.
Ivanova was in touch with us. Hello, dear participants. I was actually I wanted to be a part of another session. Well, for some reason, I have your speech in this session, but I'm not going to insist, whatever you say. So let us do it a little bit later.
ну хорошо, ладно, давайте
Okay,
я вам дам слово.
give me a minute to focus. Yeah, I'll pass the floor to you a little later. What section would you like to speak? I think it was for the second day. Let me just, yeah, I will speak. I will speak. Allow me just to just
Все-таки
focus for a
действительно
minute.
хотелось,
Yes,
чтобы
actually, yes, I'd like you
потому что
to
эта
speak
тема, я
today as a part of this
очень могу
session
рассказывать,
because if you speak of the ratings, I think it's
вот в
most
этой части
it's
поэтому
most relevant for this section.
вернемся к вашему
So let
выступлению.
us
Сейчас я
come
вижу,
back to
что
your
Ольга
presentation later.
закончила уже свою
So I have,
презентацию,
as I mentioned, presenting,
поэтому еще раз я хочу вам
showing her
представить
presentation on
главного
screen. So once again,
института
allow me to
региональной профессора
introduce
Института
Professor
макрорегиональной
of
экономики,
the
к
Institute of
сожалению,
Regional Economy, as I mentioned, Maria mentioned. I'd like to pass the floor to you now. Thank you. Organizing. Where is it? Okay. Can you hear me? Yes, yes, yeah, I could hear you just fine. Thanks. We don't see you just yet, but I'd like to say a few words about why, about my choice of topic, improved efficiency of fiscal decision in ecology. Tatiana Vinogradova said that today one of the key issues is the uh, challenges we're facing, the climate change challenges that are of a global character, and that's why it seemed to me interesting to consider this topic in a specific direction when it comes to ecology. So why ecology? Ecological needs and interests of the population. First of all, the relevant of the issue uh, for Russians is clearly expressed. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna speak of how Russians react to ecological challenges. The second block has to do with the contribution of ecology into mortality of the population. The World Health Organization provides some statistics, but other than that, especially in the industrial regions where the ecological situation is difficult, you can see decreased reproductivity with women, increased child disease rate. So we speak of human capital, uh, the quality of the human capital in the long term will decrease. And the third, the government's governmental interest in solving this issue. So the economical losses that amount to quite serious numbers. We can also add that in some regions, climatic changes can cause 5-6% economical damage. So now we speak of how the budgets are allocated. What numbers are we speaking of that we need to save uh, and where we need to engage public participation. So you can see the spending on ecology, on environmental, it's state sector, and even though these spendings grew quite seriously over this period, but uh, the budgeting for the environment is less than 1%. Another indicator is the investment into the capital, the environmental capital for the. So here you can see the federal budget, the local regional budgets, and most importantly is the what enterprise can offer, and the regional federal budgets are not quite significant when it comes to the structure of the spendings in 2019. The state sector amounted 28.7%. That's a past period. Now the spendings of the federal budget uh, on the environmental safety amounts to more than 1 trillion rubles, but uh, uh, significant funds are allocated to national projects. You know that the national projects that are considered as a key tool for achieving of national SDG. There are a lot of funds invested into that. You can see the spending of the federal budget on on national projects. So you can see this is a share right here in the overall spending. The federal budget on ecology and national projects. Now, we must say that due to COVID-19 pandemic and the economical situation in place, the sequestering was conducted for the project, and we must say that at the initial stages of its development, it was presumed to spend 701 billion rubles. As we can see in 21-23, it's 343 billion. And that means that there's an issue of the use, the efficacy uh, of even higher efficacy of the spending of the federal budget dedicated to this national project. So now these spendings on the execution of federal projects are quite differentiated. And as you can see on some of the projects, on some federal projects that are part of this national projects, they amount to anywhere from 71 billion rubles to 3.4. So that's the lowest level of spending. It's maintenance of biodiversity and development of eco-tourism. And thus we have a very complex issue of how we must save or more rationally use the funds allocated for ecological issues. I must say that the main spendings on the regular ecological activity come from the regional budgets because the function of ecology are mostly passed on to the regional level. So now, what subjects of civil participation uh, 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 in ecology can be, what actors can be identified. So here, Alexander Yurich spoke of it briefly, but I'd like to speak of collegial and consultative organs on ecological issues, NGOs with regional branches. We're talking about major unions there mentioned here. Russian is they have regional departments, and thus they have uh, they also can take part in the process. NGOs and citizens, activists, leaders of ecological movements. But applied to ecology, I would like to say the following: I think it's more of those are more of potential participants, potential subjects of civil participation in improved efficacy. Because if you look at the goals of public organizations, including the major unions, the issue of participation, improved efficacy of budget decisions, it's not part of the agenda. When it comes to NGOs, when it comes to ecology situation, it's quite difficult because their numbers are decreasing, and more so here. Uh, 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 I will speak of it a little later. We're facing issues of them being known in the regions. Eco-activist leaders of ecological movements. It seems to me that when it comes to initiative budgeting at the moment, if it's possible, though it's quite difficult when it comes to ecology. So there's two-letter subjects that could take part in the process. When it comes to St. Petersburg, in St. Petersburg, we have ecological councils working. We have ecological council in the form of a public council. Uh, that's public ecological councils under the auspices of the Leningrad region, with no officials as members. And there's also a council with the government of St. Petersburg and the public chamber. And public chamber determines itself as a key institute of the civil society, and that's something that we could agree with, perhaps. And the regional public chambers, and that's what Alexander Yurich spoke of. That's where we have some issues. But why am I saying that those are potential participants of civil participation? Why? Because everything depends on how these councils are put together, how we turn the makeup of these councils, how well is expert community presented, the most qualified experts, and how the interaction is constructed with the authorities. So for now, I'm speaking of potential participants. If we're to speak of St. Petersburg in particular, it's a ecological commission, it's a ecological council and a public chamber. Though mostly it works with a commission of transport and ecology and urbanism and coordination council. And now a few words about uh, when we speak of putting together local ecological agenda and the opportunity to participate for citizens and NGOs in allocation of in this agenda when it comes to ecology, we need to consider that the information sources, who are we working with? If you look at the social networks, uh, we can see the information source, it's considered by 39%, and we can see numbers on various age groups. This is a survey that was done in 2020. Local regional television and federal television. Uh, so when it comes to informing the population, we need to consider the age factor. As we can see, it is seen that an important state task by 1824, it's 39%, and the older people get, the more seriously people take it. Gets to over 50%. Now, what I spoke of the activity of eco organizations and eco activists, unfortunately, the survey shown quite confusing results. Well informed of these organizations are only 7%. Know nothing about them is for 43%. Informed of their existence but don't know about their activity, 50%. I must say that there was a time that the part of fiscal transparency project we also dealt with. We also had worked on this topic. It's ecological budget spending and participation of NGOs. I must say that in that sense, not much has changed since because the world's survey numbers that have shown that the level of knowledge among the population on the activity of NGOs at the moment is uh, well, the population is not that familiar with their activity. So now, speaking of ways of increasing efficacy of budget solutions in ecology, I would establish three key groups. The first thing we're seeing is has to do of has to do with uh, improvement of mechanisms of interaction, control and recommendations that can be uh, um, created as part of this a civil facilitation for the authorities. And it has to do, first of all, with, uh, as you can see, the first 4 points, it's recommended for the regional authorities. The second thing has to do with national project, the ecology national project, national ecological project. So here we need to improve, we need to foster the process w- stay within budget limitations, conduct public monitoring of national project execution. The thing is that in practice, the expert involvement of the national project is not sufficient at the moment because the this, national project is is very specific, and it will not make a great emphasis on the improvement of local ecological situation because it does not include the whole range of issues that relate to industrial waste, soil, and so forth. And and it's implemented. It is not executed well enough. In particular, in 2019, there was there was a report done on the execution of the project, and there was quite some serious comments made, including some points on the financing of the project. And now, when it comes to when it comes to uh, uh, the issue of engaging the participants in the table earlier, NGOs and citizen initiatives. And here we're missing a information system, but it should be two bilateral. First of all, so we have a platform for participation, including the initiative budgeting system. We need to inform of the state of the environment, and then the second block of information is spending of the regional budgets on ecology. And now, considering the attitude towards NGOs and the level of awareness among the public, here we need to emphasize fostering the development of ecological NGOs, improving the citizen awareness of their activity and their ability to represent the population on the issues of ecological development. And now creating the conditions for initiative participatory budgeting in ecology. First of all, I think at the moment it should be done on the local level as a local ecological event agenda is put together. And I'd like to speak of the two directions on the latter. The thing is that at the moment, the ecological competencies and culture, and that has to do with all of the process participants, is not at the level where it should be. And so it's an issue of training or retraining, including the representatives of the authorities as well as creating it's a creation of ecological thinking that would that sort of the foundation of ecological behavior and undoubtedly affects uh, the budget allocation. And that's also increasing the budget competency. It has to do more with so civil organizations and NGOs. And the final point I'd like to make is that everything we've said about state ecological policy, we spoke from the standpoint of eco policy, but now it's common knowledge that only eco policy cannot solve serious ecological issues, and there are two trends in the world that we need to foster in Russia, and that's a reorganization of federal and regional financial systems to improve the ecological situation in the regions, and uh, including the use of green financing instruments. In that sense, we fall behind from the better developed countries where the system developed a lot further uh, with by being considered in company strategies or investors providing means for these projects of so-called G factors. Today, I think the ministry we have developed, the finance ministry developed recommendations on the use of these of these uh, transition to project financing with ecological issues taken into account. And the second, the transition to new economical models, because we know that the most harm to the environment done by the traditional model of economy. You produce something and you turn it into waste. This accumulating waste has led to uh, ecological crisis we're seeing now. So we're speaking of transitioning to a green, circular economy, bioeconomy, because as a part of these, within the framework of these systems and models, technologies provide a double effect, both economical and ecological. I must say that here we also have, we're also quite lagging behind from the from some foreign more advanced countries. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Margarita Fedorovna. You know, uh, I must share with you my, a pain of mine and a concern of mine. I I've listened to Margarita Fedorovna was I've paid close attention to her presentation. I think that the civil participation in eco agenda is perhaps one of the most crucial topics of participatory and initiative budgeting, and it's quite clear it's not paid due attention to neither by citizens nor organizers of the initiative budgeting, and at the same time. All of these conversations, superficial conversation about it, not it never not having to do with us. It's it's only going to get better if the ocean level of the ocean goes up. It's ignoring the problem. The problem becomes more and more clear every year.
Среда обитания огромной
The
территории страны,
changes.
просто
The
огромной.
traditional environment changes, just huge changes, and it's about 20 over 20, 30 years with some it happens in Khanty-Mansiysk, and I must say that the snow time that was there before is becoming a thing of the past. Well, thank God this year, unfortunately, the rivers froze, but in some years, the freezing only takes place for only short term. All of our infrastructure is based on ice, and as soon as melting starts, we're going to have disastrous consequences over all of our Arctic territory. But that's once the ice melts. But that's a that's objectives of the state to think of that. I don't think that citizens can have a deciding role here. But citizens have their own role in that. They have their own role that on the local level President and with the help of a local project that can foster the solution of this project, and it can help monitor the changes. State will not be able to provide monitoring of all of the changes without engaging the citizens into the agenda, without ways of creating of civil participation. The state alone will not be able to handle this huge problem. Perhaps such complex problems were never actually faced by the country. So we still have a little time, maybe a few years, and before they start taking on a catastrophic character. Right now, we're just looking at some episodes that do not come together into a big picture. So I really would want this forecast to come true, but it's not my forecast. It's a forecast of the people who work on this professionally, and us in turn should really prepare ourselves for that and pay a good deal of attention to that in our practices. So I'm very grateful to Margarita Fedorovna for her presentation, for the attempt to draw attention to the issue. Thank you so much. I'd like to say that not everyone share this position, and among authority representatives and the expert community, there is an opinion. Some people express an opinion that it's not relevant, and in particular, the cold times also uh, uh, became part of the reason. Well, are you talking about the global warming? Look at these calls. They're an indicator that this climactic agenda and ecological agenda are not relevant at the moment. That takes place, and it happens also among authority representatives on a higher level as well. The only positive that I can see in this, I can say that on the ecological forums over the past years, uh, now there's the participation of ministries of economy, representatives of the Ministry of Finance, and I don't know whether this agenda will be spoken of at the St. Petersburg Economical Forum. But but 2 years back, there was a platform where there was a platform where there was a discussion on the green economy being a reality or a myth. So that took place at the St. Petersburg Economical Forum. So this issue is quite acute, both from the point of view of bringing up ecological competencies and culture. It's a very crucial task. I must say that some really changes that took place in training and education. For instance, China think that officials need to be retrained. Uh, 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 that were taught before SDG was paid attention to. So now we have the big universities, the Polytech, the Moscow University, and around this, they all quite seriously deal with training such specialists. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Margarita Fedorovna, could you please close your presentation so far? Uh, where- so we continue with our session. Now I'd like to pass the floor to Olga Ivanovna Timofeeva. She, Olga Ivanovna, please do take the floor. Hello, dear colleagues. Well, so it's a second attempt for me. Uh, I am trying to start my presentation, screen sharing. Okay.
Да, видно.
Can you see
Пока
it?
нет, давайте
Not
немного.
yet. Not yet. Let us just wait a little bit. It's as long as you have the confirmation that it's happening, because we're not seeing it just yet.
Так, совместное использование.
Да, вот теперь видно.
Don't use. Okay, now you can see. Yes. Okay, now I've started screen sharing, and we can see your presentation.
А, Я немножко
I will
расскажу о
speak
рейтинге
briefly
стабильности
of
Российской Федерации,
rating on the level of transparency in the Russian Federation that we put together in the course of a number of years, and for the first time, it was created in 2013. So it has it already has some quite history, and over time it was recognized by, first of all, by the financial authorities, subjects of the Russian Federation. And at the moment, this rating is done, is ordered by the Ministry of Finance of the Russian Federation. So actually, it being a source of interest can be confirmed by some numbers. Or you can see when it comes to methodology, the subjects forward more than 200 offers for the on the methodology, and we correct our methodology and very clarify it every year. During the publication period, the number of views of the page site of the page on our site is increases 3 or 4 times in general. Not only the rating page, but and amounts to about 200 views a day. So based on participants, I can see a lot of representatives from regions that we interact with. Everyone is awaiting the 2020 results now, but we'll publish early next week. So we'll literally have a few days left to wait. But that's just a side comment. The ideology of behind the rating uh, is based on the ideology of international fiscal partnership that calculates fiscal transparency budget globally. Ideologically, we based ourselves on this methodology, but at the same time, we have implemented some of our own peculiarities and nuances, and from the technological and there are some technological difference. First of all, from the very start, we have used data that was open source data at the state authority sites. No queries sent, with some rare exceptions when some information, just due to the fact that it's impossible to look for it in the 85 regions. We asked to forward us information. We asked for some official letters where we can find this information. It mostly has to do with the mass media, for instance, and these sort of indicators.
На этом слайде
On
показано,
this slide, you can see the directions that are assessed in the rating at the moment. The first, they're quite similar. The first 5, they're very close to the ideology of international fiscal partnership, and that has to do with the fact that, in essence, it's a budgeting process. It's a budget project. It's a law on the budget. It's projects and laws on the changes in the budget. It's intermediary reports, annual report on budget performance. So those are the directions that are assessed. Uh, that assess uh, uh, the information at each of the stage, the process stage. There are some peculiarities that has to do with projects and laws on changes into the budget. It's actually, in our opinion, it's the point of the budgeting process in the Russian Federation, because the number of changes that are introduced in the budget laws uh, uh, is extremely high. So corrections are introduced since starting with December of the year before the budget goes into effect. Last year, in one of the regions, there were 12 laws introduced into the budget, into the fiscal law. And the next direction that we assess is the other directions are different. Uh, from the practices and ideology of international fiscal partnership. It's openness of the activity of external financial control bodies, and the publication of results of control measures, placement of financial documents on the activity of state establishment on the official site of the Russian Federation. Um, Organization of public council work created under the auspices of financial bodies of Russian Federation, organization of works on civil awareness on budget issues with and the public hearings on budget projects and the annual report on the budget execution. So there are some blocks that are present in the international standard and some are not. For instance, the placement of financial documents on the activity of state institutions. That this block allows us to create. It just has to do with us having the resource. Not all of the countries provide this opportunity. And actually, so this is the direction that we were able to include into our rating. Uh, Also, there are two forms of public participation. They're given a good deal of attention to. There's more, they're getting to be more and more attention given to it. It's the assessment of the organization of public councils under the auspices of financial organs and public hearings on budget projects and annual reports. Why did we select these particular forms? It just has to do with the fact that uh, they're established in the federal law and the subject of the Russian Federation are forced to somehow uh, include these forms of work into their practice and do something in this direction. So today, in today's presentation, it was noted that when it comes to civil participation, there is some room for growth, for improvement, and for now we're only at the beginning of the way, and sometimes it's even it even stalls a bit and perhaps goes in reverse. But we hope that this direction will develop in the future, and the community will be more broadly involved into the fiscal process. For instance, the public councils. The community councils that is perhaps similar from more formal work to put it softly when this direction was curated by the government of the Russian Federation. It was a special minister appointed that I forgot the name that that is now removed from state service, and no one is curating this direction in the Russian Federation government. This had an effect, a negative effect on the performance of these public councils. But nonetheless, this forum is provided by the law on organization of public control, and public councils. Well, at least they continue their existence. Some of them are working, but it's hard to speak of their efficiency so far. Also, public hearings, there are also forms that perhaps are uh, perhaps allow the citizens to participate in the fiscal process. But once again, the public hearings that would be actually built on partnership, what the first speaker spoke of today, that's something that we do not have just yet. It's most often it has to do with a letter form of interaction, and sometimes like people feel like that at least they were heard out. We could put it this way. Uh, and once again, we think that direction should be developed, and with a method, and with our rating methodology, it's what we're trying to do, attempt to do. Organization of presenting creating civil awareness. It's about once again, it's budgeting for the people. Once again, we start with the brochure, and we move on to more varied forms where information on the dues on the budget can be delivered to the community. And actually, there are a few indicators of what positive changes are taking place with fiscal transparency on the regional level. On this slide, you can see the number of Russian Federation subjects that provided data in open access in 2013 and in 2019 accordingly. Uh, budget project for financial year, anywhere from we went from a half to pretty much full coverage. The same thing with even lower start. You can see projects law on the budget performance for the past year. Situation improved significantly on the corrections, on the amendments. If at initial the initial stages it was 1/5, now it's more than a half. So same thing with quarterly reports on budget performance. And once again, we're especially happy with the positive changes that took place with control authorities. And once again, the dynamic is the following: that in 2013 it was 1/3, and now the control measure materials by external financial control organs are published uh, by practically 70% of the Russian Federation subjects. This topic is actually quite curious. From the very start, we oftentimes we've heard from control authorities and from financial authorities that actually uh, that it's none of your business and who allowed you to, right? So now these conversations pretty much stopped. No one starts them now. Now we're discussing some content issues that have to do with maybe of the actual of the deadlines. Yeah, we have publication deadlines issues. Uh, Not everyone is able to adhere to to these deadlines just due to the peculiarities of the activities involved. But a control chamber is a special organ that no one should interfere with. I mean, to know of this authority that well, at least these conversations are no longer heard. And once again, we think that it's already a great progress. Uh, uh, another important topic. It relates to not only the data, some data that's placed in the internet. We're speaking of something that characterizes how public hearings are put together on a budget project. Uh, Okay, placing information informational messages on public hearings that can be quite easily found. In 2015, there were 49 federation subjects that would inform citizens on the public hearings in this way. In 2019, it's 78. So you can see this number growing over time. Uh, uh, a publication of a protocol accepted as a result of public hearings. So in 2015 and 2016, we had it's something that they were not assessed. It was considered good that at least there would be an informational message. Starting 2017, we started assessing, considering the protocol, and later we move on to the content assessment of the content of the protocol. Here we're speaking of the actual presence. So in 2017 it was 29, 2018 53, 2019 55. So once again, this number keeps growing, and I must note that the, the actual methodology of our rating, uh, well, the bar keeps going up. At the initial stages, we would assess uh, the presence or absence of information, deadlines, uh, to make sure that it's accessible while it's still relevant. When the actual stage of the budgeting is taking place. So, and that's what we that's pretty much what we adhere to on most indicators. So now we're more and more moving towards assessment of data from the content standpoint as well. In particular, it relates to the issues that have to do with public hearings. Actually, we think that it's very important to uh, uh, have the methodology develop every year. Like I say, it gets clarified. Some elements, some new elements are added to it. Some elements are removed. Uh, and actually, this uh, motivates the regions to also develop in this direction. And the results that are achieved by Russian Federation, by the Federation subjects also show that the development is just mandatory because the subjects that uh, are at the top of the rating in their own way, they already achieve this bar. And if you don't develop the methodology, it seems like they have no room to develop. Uh, it's only on their own gives you an understanding of where to go and what needs to be done specifically in the future. For some regions, it's possible. For some, it's difficult. So we need to note that the rating is not only an assessment, not only a stimuli, but it also is a certain methodological guidance in a way for the regions of what direction they should develop in order to improve the fiscal transparency data for their region. And also another thing that the rating provides, it improves the quality, improves the qualification levels for the financial experts that deal with the issue that become uh, that start dealing with it for one reason or another. It's also quite obvious in the work we do. Something we can see from the very start, perhaps since we started putting this rating together, and we think that that it's also a very good result of the work we do. Another thing I'd like to speak of, and it's also another thing that differentiates us from the international practices, fiscal partnership. We form a library of best practices where we select some examples, some very good examples of practical execution of practical execution on rating indicators, and sometimes on some innovation directions that are not assessed as a part of rating, but nonetheless we observe them and somehow considered them useful for others. And this library of best practices allows other regions to become familiar with these good examples, and if there is a desire, a region may attempt to create something similar. So that's that's perhaps about it. Olga Ivanovna, I have a whole number of questions. I can see that you're about to finish. So we have some quite specific questions for you. Alexander Yurich Yegorov, I would like to ask you the first question. Thank you so much. Olga Ivanovna, thank you so much for a very interesting speech. Just regarding public hearings, do you share? Let's put it this way, what percentage of the hearings on the budget that take place in reality, and how many take place online? Prior to 2020, we would only consider hearings that would take place in person. This year, since the law, there were some changes to the law, uh, and public hearings can with no such requirements. We were forced to gather information on what form the meetings took place and whether it was online. They have also they have different names. So in our tables that you see that we put together and we publish, all this information will be present, and in the nearest future we're planning to post it. Am I correct in understanding that, well, COVID is a special case, and we hope that once it's over, all of these practices will not stay. But am I correct in understanding that in case of St. Petersburg, where there were online hearings, where they started doing online hearings about 8 years ago. So for you, was considered as absence of a public hearing. Yes, yeah. If there were no meeting in person, those meetings were not considered. But this year, we had to make an exception. Yes, yeah, that's clear enough. It's COVID. It's an extraordinary situation. As long as that it does not stay after the pandemic is over as a habit. And another question: are they're tracking on how the hearing results are reflected in budget decisions, and if uh, in your observation, how are things developing in the development? These are and where's okay, we can see the library of best practices. Okay, this is the floor. Well, what can I say on this question? That the feedback it's more of an exception than a rule, and mass assessment of on 85 subjects is pointless, in my opinion. About 2 years ago, we encountered a practice. The region, I don't remember the region at the moment, but I think uh, there was a hearing. Uh, a report was published on the execution of the previous protocol. This example is a part of the best practice library, and at least that's just at least something. Well, those are not quite the reports that we've seen abroad, uh, but I can add to that that this year we have another order from the Ministry of Finance that has to do with public hearings. And after having done the work, we think that some results will be reflected in the rating methodology. Just that will improve the practical significance of the event because at the moment in many of the regions it's a formal event that is useless. It's just a waste of time. But there are some regions that really do try to, well, at least hear what the public has to say. And there are some examples where public hearings are conducted by legislators, and legislators are interested in the people's position on certain budget issues. And there are some good practices where the executive authorities once again try to hear something and take into consideration when putting together budget projects. So here, the regions could use some. Well, but once again, there is an issue of how it's better done, how it could be better organized, how it can be used later. Of course, this is where we're facing the issue of not having the understanding of this issue. And for a number of regions, there is an issue of just there's no desire to do this. I think it. Olga, one very important word. We perhaps would like to offer you a partnership because it's very important to establish feedback by the means of rating. Because once region leaders will see their low ratings, just just compared to the neighbors, they'll probably try to say what the hell. And this is where the feedback is important. I've studied the reports on efficacy on human rights representatives. But what is it? There was a question of the efficacy of the recommendations they make, and it's not tracked. And there is a department a year past what was done in some cases. With everyone else, the best thing you can do is just say yes, we've heard you. So it's very good direction for going to getting away from imitation. So now we're getting into the final part of our section. We have some time for discussion, for some brief comments and opinion exchange. But before we do that, I'd like to sort of set the standard for these speeches, because based on what I've heard and when I was thinking about it earlier, I have three questions that came to mind. And those are the three questions that largely one way or the other were raised today. I would really want our speakers to somehow attempt to answer some of these questions, and I think it would be useful for uh, practical embodiment of the result that will be achieved at our section. First question: do you think that the existing form uh, budget transparency, do you think it's outdated? The second question, how to increase public interest towards budget information transparency. And the third question, Yuri Viktorovich inspired this question. A forecast for changes. How fast and how much changes will take place when it comes to open transparency data information? So those are the three questions. Is existing form of transparency obsolete? How to increase public interest, and forecast for changes? How ripe is it, and how fast it can take place? Who would like to start our discussion? Who would like to speak first?
Тишина была ему ответом.
Silence. That is the answer.
Значит, я прошу, вот я
Yeah.
одну техническую просьбу
I
хочу.
would just like to give one technical request. All those who would like to continue speaking, please
Желание, ладно,
do
чтобы я
note in
мог
chat
планировать
that you
и
want
число
to participate
выступающих,
for
и
me to be able to plan how many of you would like to participate and to have some form of regulating this discussion process. Okay, this is Tatiana Vinogradova here. Okay, yes. I would like to just comment the previous presentation, but I was not trying to impose because I'm sure I will have the opportunity to comment later on, but because everybody is slowly brewing and ripening up to certain presentations, perhaps I will not be able to answer the questions that you have just posed, but I would like to disagree with the evaluation of the regions of the Russian Federations in terms of openness and with the use of some questions from the International Budgeting Partnership. I think here it's very important to know the difference between these two evaluations because the tool set, and I am going to later move on to the questions that Vladimir Vladimirovich asked, I will answer them, but the International Budgeting Partnership gives a certain benchmark, a certain standard of transparency and public participation towards which we need to aim. Here, it's clear that all the countries are different. And in some African countries, there is no digital at all. Like we had it back in the 90s when everybody was printing everything on papers and handing them out. And, everything is spread in JPEG. There's nothing that can even be retyped. And the local authorities don't have the potential in order to do everything in a scale that could be comparable. But nevertheless, the International Budgeting Partnership sets a benchmark towards which we need to strive. And when we are trying to move towards the situation where in regions we will have public hearings, public council, if we are to set the bar a little bit higher, if we just set new requirements to these public hearings, and this index, it sets these benchmarks, these standards. If we are to take them, then if we do not take them, we do not aid further development. And I would just like to note that these tool sets must have an opportunity to improve itself. There is no need to compare them between another. We just need a capacity for improvement and to move towards the reform in the regions. And I think that this potential improvement would set out the roadmap according which we could continue improving ourselves. And this would allow us to improve the further openness work because this benchmarks could be a great advantage. Now, moving on to your questions, do the forms that we currently have in our work, are the forms that we currently work outdated? Well, we in the Russian Federation, I think we have not even tried 20% of what is available with this regard. We are moving towards this. If I am to compare ourselves to different countries, I think we are moving forward fairly quickly. We do get pulled back occasionally, but in terms of digital solutions, we do have a great potential. Now, why do we need to increase the interest of citizens in this process? If the citizens are provided with the opportunities to participate, if these opportunities are present, then it is the citizens who will be able to find their own interest. The question that we currently have is that we are very limited in these opportunities right now. We need to somehow fight for them, to struggle for them. We need to somehow demand our possibility to participation. So our citizens are not usually invited to participate in some coordinated committees or in some public hearings or parliamentary debates or to just give their comments in general. But everybody's just expecting people to come. They're saying that, hey, you can email us here, you can give us feedback there. And we do have a law regarding the feedback from the citizens now. Thereby, the fullness of public involvement is not fully used. But I don't think there is a need for a separate motivation and incentivization of citizens to take part. That's my comment. It's a very provocative thesis that you just put out. But if we are to think about it, when you're saying there is no need to increase the interest and incentivization of citizens' interest to participate, well, I don't think we are talking about it actually increasing in terms of interest. And, we are doing a lot in order to create a variety of sites, a variety of portals. We have an unclear feedback, unclear metrics. So maybe there is no point to artificially create this interest in budget participation. Maybe we do need to create the opportunities. And if the opportunities are there, the interest is something that will come naturally. It's an interesting thesis that you've put out. It's provocative, but it does have a certain rationale behind it. Now, who else would like to continue? Now I have Anna Bilinchuk right in front of myself. I see her interested face, and it looks like she wants to give a comment. It seems like we have put her towards the third section with the ecological economy and the green economy and the tools that can be used to it, but maybe she has something to add to this section as well. Anna, the floor is yours. Your microphone is still off. Please turn it on. Down in the tool panel, Anna, you have a little icon of the microphone. You need to click that, and then you will be unmuted. Anna is an experienced user. She knows how to do this. Oh, you turned it off. You need to somehow click it harder, yeah? Yes, colleagues. Hello. I'm very happy to see all of you, great experts. I mean, we've been working side by side many years, me from the Ministry of Finance, you in the expert community. Now, I perhaps am going to just speak about my own position because right now our experts are working on one pole, but the government authorities, including the Ministry of Finance, it seems like your microphone just turned off again, Anna. Can I just comment on the ecology issues? Wait, let us first hear out Anna because I think she will be able to overcome the microphone issues. And after that, we're definitely going to give her the word. I understood that Margarita Zamyatina, you wanted to comment. Yes, I did. Anna, what is happening with your technical side, with your microphone? Are you able to give us the comment or? I think also Mr. Chugunov also would like to comment. Okay, if Anna is struggling with the microphone, maybe we should move to the next commentator. Anna, we will give you the word later when you conquer the technical issues. And now, Margarita Zamyatina, please, the floor is yours. Well, I disagree with Tatiana Vinogradova in terms of there not being a need for the interest to be big, just provide opportunities and the interest will come. Now, in terms of ecology, I think that I want to tell you that one of the biggest difficulties with citizen participation is that today there is a very high demand for solving ecology issues, but a very low level of interest in eco-activism. So if that is not something that we cultivate, we will not have participant, then we will not have an opportunity to employ their participation in solving ecological issues. But that's just in terms of ecology. I also have a comment from Andrei Chugunov. He would also like to comment. Andrei Vladimir, we need you to turn on your microphone. Andrei Chugunov, we need you to turn on your microphone. Your microphone is still off. Andrei Chugunov, there is a little microphone sign down on the panel. You just need to click it. There we go. Okay, now you clicked some other icon. Now you're gone.
Нет у нас какой-то системной здесь ошибки в
Do we not have some systemic issue with people being unable to turn on their sound? No, I don't think he's using the computer. I think he's using the phone. Could that be the issue? Well, you see, all these smartphones, they are hindering our ability to connect, huh?
Алло, алло,
Hello.
алло.
Hello.
Нет, мы вас по-прежнему не слышим.
Okay, and we still can't hear you, and we still can't hear both of you. Colleagues, it says that the organizer has muted everybody forcefully. Oh, okay, there we go. Now it's back. Okay, colleagues, yeah, I apologize. It's just my sound turns on and then a little panel pops up saying that organizer did not allow the participants to turn on the microphone. I think there was just a systemic option. Okay, never mind. We just used the backup channel and just made sure that's all correct. Okay, dear colleagues, thank you very much for the invitation. And thank you very much for an amazingly interesting discussion. Now, I would like to answer 3 questions that were posed by Vladimir Vladimirovich. Now, the question is the current form of doing things outdated? Of course, it's not yet fully past its use time, but it is on the verge of transitioning everything into the digital space. It is a very dangerous transition. It's a very dangerous line. And I'm working on digitalization my entire life. But here I would like to be on the side of the skeptics of this process. I would say that a cautious balance of digitalization and offline methods is needed. We need to make sure we have offline communication, discussions, and arriving at a certain solution. So this balance, it will not allow, because this is a colossal task. And in each of the subjects, this task has its own peculiarities and details. And it's the direction that our experts here are engaged in. When we're talking about budgeting, this is something we need to make sure we take everything into account, because digitalization, of course, brings along enormous opportunities for manipulation. But I think everybody is aware of that. So no, it is not fully outdated, but of course, this process is going to continue to move towards employing new technologies. This is something that is inevitable. Now, how can we increase the interest of citizens in participating? Of course, this could be done only through positive cases and through eliminating this manipulative, or how Alexander Yurievich has denoted it, as a case where there is a certain masquerade, when there is a show rather than a real work on taking into account the citizen's opinion, when there is a formality that needs to be ticked off, when there is just an organizational formality where we just do the public hearings to tick the box. By the way, there was an interesting case that was presented. I actually did not know that they invited actors to take part in the hearings with regards to Gazprom Arena. Oof. So only through positive cases can we promote interest. When citizens see that real problems get real solutions, only then you know, our team, we are studying the phenomena of electronic participation and all the successful cases. For example, our website in St. Petersburg are all to do with word of mouth advertisement. So, when we are doing expert interviews in the Smolny Palace, and when we asked what were the reasons for it actually taking off, advertisement or separate different ways of propagating this, we have found out that nothing has led to the results except for the word of mouth. And when neighbors started exchanging messages saying that it's good and it's working, and when they started sharing the results that were achieved through this, only then did the process take off. So only positive results. And the third question now, regarding the potential forecast for changes, is usually we have 2 basic scenarios, the pessimistic one and the optimistic one. And I think that here we have 2 triggers, or I don't even know how to put them, 2 metrics, maybe 2 criteria. It is either the development or the degradations of the institutions of the public community. This is a process that is very ambiguous, both in the world and in Russia. And here, populism, of course, affects it significantly. So does politics. And of course, the second criteria is how well will the real management in places down grassroots management develop. So the development of these two factors, the development of these two criteria will influence how the further growth and development of this system will grow. And from my side, I would like to recommend for everybody to direct their attention to the new trend. And this trend is very closely connected to digitalization, but not exclusively to digitalization. It is the process that has been launched from the start of last year. It is the development of the growth of the centers of the regions of the various subjects of the Russian Federation. Now, the area of federal budgeting, of initiative budgeting, it is something that these centers in the regions are not yet interested in. But I would not rule out that this is somehow, that this is a two things that we somehow need to creatively connect or not connect. This, of course, depends on the success of this ambitious project of regional centers, because from our point of view, its success, the success of this project on the centers of management in the regions, its success would depend on the implementation of the management styles based on a lot of data that is incoming. And what you're talking in your communities, it is very closely related to this. It is detailed information, not only about the budgeting processes, but also about the changes that take place. These are the numbers and the data that are ideally related to a particular point on the map and a particular issue. This is something that we can consider to be a methodology of management that is based on data. That's it. Thank you. Yes, thank you as well. We're still not seeing Anna Belinchuk. She said an amazing introductory paragraph and then went, okay, I'm here. And maybe without my video, it's going to be a better, because as soon as I turn on the sound, my image goes off and okay. But regardless, what I was saying, why do we have two different polarities? Why do we have one pole with amazing experts such as yourselves and another pole with the executive authorities, including the Ministry of Finance and including the audit chamber, which for some reason do not hear each other? I mean, these two poles. I think the issue here is that your recommendations need to be more specific. You can't be talking to a government authority from a position of general recommendations, saying that you need to improve citizen participation or you need to improve public hearings on budgeting. No, we need specific solutions. That's the language that a government body understands. You say, for example, you have an international experience of ABC, you have positive results as an XYZ. And something from this experience could be applied to the Russian Federation. So when the expert's position is going to be well backed, then a government authority is always going to have an easier time to hear it and to undertake specific actions in order to increase the openness of the budget. That is what I wanted to share.
Хотел бы очень коротко прокомментировать.
I would like to give a brief comment regarding that remark. We are colleagues for a long time. We are partners for many years. And over these years, we have tackled this big looming topic. And me, more than many others, understand what she's saying when she's saying about the different poles, where on one pole you have the expert society, and on the other pole you have the administrative government entities. And I would like to say that this thing is very cliche, but despite its being a cliche, it still holds true. The opportunity and the possibility of mediation between the expert society and the demands that are being put forth by the government, municipalities, agencies to the format of the documents is an entire special skill set. It's another special competency that needs to be developed, honed, and grown. And we do have a need for these think tanks, these centers that, on one hand, would be on the side of the expert community and understand the strategic processes for these development, but at the same time, that could think and that could talk on the language that is clear and understandable to the heads, the chiefs, and the employees of various government institutions. Unfortunately, this skill set is not yet there. We do not yet have the environment to hone that skill set. And I would like to say that, our Center of Initiative Budgeting that we are running for 6 years now, and we have done an amazing evolution along this path. But nevertheless, I understand that we still are not speaking the same language. We continuously have miscommunications. We are not being understood. We're unable to get our thoughts and ideas across. And when we're talking about change today, I fully understand that even if we are to trace the evolution of the questions of experts participating in the transparency process, I mean, there's a 20-year-old history to this process, because we can see that if we take this at large, the tradition of transparency in budgeting was born through the expert community that has on multiple occasions carried out projects that later, at a later stage, in many
Зацепились за
cases
вот
by
какой-то
accident,
мотив
were
государственной
able
власти и
to
постепенно начала
settle in the government bodies. And then slowly we started seeing the formation of this modern tradition that we see today. And this culture of communication started growing. We need mutual steps towards each other. We can't have the government wait for the experts to learn to get the proper documents. That is pointless. We need to make sure that both sides are taking steps towards each other. And what Alexander Yurevich has been telling us about the expert community, definitely, that is something that needs to be thought about. And I would also like to add, so not to come back to this later, I want to add in this amazing triangle where you have NGOs, the expert community, and then on top of that, we have the government authorities. We have one more entity that is missing, an entire other stakeholder that we unfortunately continue forgetting until today. And that stakeholder is the citizens. These are the citizens that are not part of NGOs, that not part of any public organizations, to who we allow the initiative and initiative budgeting to monitor, to propose. These are not organized citizens. They just gather together one time to approve a certain project, and then they come back again for only the next project. And if we don't see a place for these citizens in this construct, something is very bad. And this is amazing, the changes we can see. But in our budgeting codex, we still don't have the citizens as a subject to this process. I mean, for how many years we're talking about this? We still don't have citizens as a subject. We don't see it. Where are the principles that would allow citizens to turn into a subject of this discussion on budgeting? Because this is not the first time you're talking about this. I've talked about this way back when. I mean, how many years have passed? Nothing changes. Nothing changes. And until we are able to see the citizen as a subject who is able to take part in this activity, nothing is going to change in our relationship with the government. It is so easy to just move away the entire citizen community and let the expert community develop by itself and let the government entity just look on top of the triangle and act like it's all by itself. That's easy, right? That's the easy way out. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Moderators should not lose themselves like that. Apologies for the heightened tone. Yes, Vladimir Vladimirovich, you will have a conference next year, right? And I would just like to direct the experts' attention towards the fact that it would be a good thing if during this conference we could have some practical solutions for the government entities, because the crisis of this transparency models development that we currently have is precisely because we do not have any ready solutions that we could implement. How can we combat this show, this masquerade, this imitation that you keep talking about? Because the financial entities are just complying with the current budgeting index, with the current budgeting legislation. They're just following the law. There are no other solutions that the government entities are being proposed with. If you have those solutions, then I'm certain that the Ministry of Finance is going to support you in this, especially taking into account that we have a deputy minister who is now for 10 years, where Sergei Lavrov is supporting this. and he's always ready for this discussion. Can I interject? Alexander Sungurov, yes. Alexander Sungurov is speaking. Yes, there was an amazing proposition from Anna. One of the tasks of this meeting is to prepare working groups in order to prepare for the conference of the next year. And I would like to get one working group on the criteria of efficacy, on the efficacy of public participation. Now, what do we mean when we say efficacy? Here, we need to take into account the threat of imitation, show, and masquerade, what Mr. Chugunov is saying. We don't need to put this show up on the front. We always need to put the more positive to the forefront with the criteria of efficacy. And if we have criteria down, if we have the mechanism of feedback in with any public hearing, make sure that that's part of a criteria eventually. How many suggestions have been put forth? How many of these suggestions or proposals were supported? If they were not supported, were they given explanations for why they were not supported? I think that is a mechanism that needs to be developed within a working group. And second, Anna, I agree with what you're saying regarding the absence of a common language, but the strategy center that has been whose work is being directed at creating this language, it's been existing based on foreign grants. And you mean how did the expert community create? And I think my colleagues have shed light on this amazingly in the interview. At the end of the 90s, the salaries of experts that we could offer were much higher than the salaries that they were offered in the universities. And so economists who were never involved in budgeting from the beginning through material and financial stimulation started engaging in this, and then they became interested. They started giving this as doctorate thesis, as magistrate works. And it's important for authorities to be talking about this. And in Pskov, we had the situation, maybe you remember this, where we were sent to chairman of the budgeting committee of Pskov. We invited her over, and she wanted to explain to the public what is the budget, and we told her to stay and to listen to what our experts are talking about that, and she understood that from the information that she hears, she gets something new as a professional, and she started attending our conferences, and which is why this community was created like that. It was a lengthy process. Right now, there are very limited number of these organizations, and we're not seeing support. The same presidential grant foundation, we had 8 projects apply, but we have 600 experts in one of these projects, part of which do not understand strategical tasks at hand, which is why it's a complete gamble. And this is also a different process of financial support. But what we can already create, depending on our salaries of the higher school of economics professors or higher educational institution professions, we can already provide something in a work group. We just need a work group regarding the efficacy of citizenship participation and public participation in the process of budgeting. We want to see smart representatives of authorities like you. And I think that through these examples, we will be able to structure. And, I want to propose this working group, and I'm ready to be one of the co-coordinators of this group. And I think that this mutual process is of utmost importance, because it's true that they speak on different languages. When I was conducting a research on the audit of the budgeting of the federal agency, they're always telling me, what experts are you talking about? I give them a particular task and he gives me a 30-page essay. What do I do with this 30-page essay? The time is up and 30 pages doesn't give me a particular example. Even like the Heritage Foundation in Washington, when I was back there, when we prepare a document for a congressman from the foundation, it must not exceed 1.5 pages, because a congressman might not have the time to read 30 pages. He's going to leave it for later, and that later will only come when he stops being a congressman. And there are hundreds of people working on just this 1.5-page document that is being presented to legislators. So this topic on creating in these new conditions, maybe I think it is enough time to cry about these foundations being gone. But right now we can work by ourselves, virtually, like we are right now. Andrei Vladimirovich, other colleagues, I think if we are to create a working group, and if, once again, using these forms of communication, if not Zoom, then Skype, some forms of IP communication. I mean, all this is also a threat. I mean, we're not discussing this right now, but the entire topic of Zoom and everything else, hey, we have pigeon mail. We can always use pigeon mail, yes. pigeon mail is always an option. But we have found out now, about pigeons. It's not a joke that during modern conflicts, the use of pigeon mail is more reliable than the means of communication that could be put out electronically. But okay, never mind. That was an off-topic notion, but I'm done. Thank you. Yes, Alexander, thank you very much, Alexander Sangurov. And right now, I would like to add to what you have just said. Now, originally, we planned this panel as an expert panel, and we did not have a task to invite the Ministry of Finance or other expert authorities, both of legislative and executive authorities. This was our conscious choice when we're setting this up, because we just wanted to start setting up the important event of next year. But yesterday, I was put at fault by the institute, by the head of our institute, that Mr. Kudrin wanted to take part in our conference, and he's interested in the transparency of budget, but we didn't invite him. And because we didn't invite him, we have stripped him of the opportunity to present in front of this community. Okay, Anna, can you please pass on to Mr. Kudrin that we wanted to see him here? We would like to see him on this conference. And if the audit chamber does consider it necessary to participate in the process of the preparation for our conference of next year, we're ready and welcome. We have a number of topics on which we could interact and intersect. Now, I have one more comment in the chat from Role Parachimovic, and I am not sure when should I give him the word. Can you just say it in your own words, please? Colleagues, yes, good day. Olga is speaking. Yes. I can't agree with the fact that all the data that should be published according to the legislation is being published, because we have the Order 243 that the data on the regional budgeting should be published from 2017. So more than 3 years, the data on municipality budgets should be published from 2019. So over a year now, we don't have either of those data sets right now. And I understand that there are a variety of reasons. It's difficult even with certain municipalities at times, and it's even harder with regional authorities at times. But right now, we don't even have the infrastructure to make that possible. And every request that we send to the Ministry of Finance, we just get formal answers saying it's underway. And since December of last year, we have an issue of the lack of registry of subsidies from the federal budget. From the June of last year, we have seen the additional data on the regional and municipality subsidies, and these are the data that users most frequently want, and these is the data that is most needed because they are the closest to the citizen. But right now, this registry is unavailable. It is completely being removed from the government budget gov.ru, and we don't have it available anymore. It's been removed from everywhere. In January, they tried to reduce the amount of data and leave in just 4 fields, but for some reason, we don't even have this reduced version available. And as a short conclusion to my short remark, I would like to add that unfortunately, right now, we have moved towards the closing of budgets and towards the lack of transparency rather than its improvement and rather than its it opening up. Yes, Olga, thank you very much for sharing your vision of this situation. First of all, I'd like to say that we're not done with the topic, and I do consider that this is a promo of sorts because tomorrow we're going to have a special session that is going to be dedicated exclusively to this sort of issues. And I think that this are very important questions of transparency on budgeting data. And tomorrow we are going to dive into this topic in great details. But right now, the time for our first section is drawing to a close. After this, we're going to have an hour-long lunch break. But right now, I do not have any further applications for short presentations in chat. And I would just like to share some of my thoughts and share my answers on the questions, because the questions I was asking myself as well. And the first question is connected with the fact that, as surprising as it may be, we have a fairly wide expert community, but the experts that started coming in and showing interest in our topic are experts from areas unknown to us before. It turns out that in medicine and from medicine, we're getting this term participatory budgeting. So in medicine, there is an entire direction of participatory healthcare, which means that without the citizens' participation in their own healing without them actually carrying out their prescriptions. The very process of curing or treating a person is not possible. And this participatory subject came from medicine. So when Alexander Sungurov used participatory budgeting from the very beginning, it's a medical term. We usually use participatory budgeting or participatory budgeting because they intersect with the medical terms. Then we also have participatory practice, which is sometimes also referred as participative. And it's also an interesting topic in education. If the student does not take part in the educational process, it is impossible to get the educational process to be efficient. And this is an entire direction for research. It exists, it develops and grows. It's fairly active and it's very interesting in terms of its findings. But if we are to talk about some of the more vivid things that I have highlighted for myself, first of all, I would like to suggest and to propose to Tatiana Ivanovna, this was part of her presentation regarding what role can this participatory and initiative budgeting, what role can it play in terms of openness, in terms of transparency, and in terms of the activity of the International Budgeting Partnership, maybe even employing the methodology of the International Budgeting Partnership. And Olga Timofeyeva have asked this for a reason, because today the majority of practices are being implemented. Almost all the things we know are being implemented on the regional, local level. But in the Russian Federation, the majority of money for participatory budgeting and initiative budgeting is being taken from the regional budgets. So 50/65% are the regional budgets. And in the world, usually this takes into account the budget of municipalities. But perhaps this is important. In the world, we already have examples, not a lot, but singular practices of federal participatory budgetings. This practice exists in South Korea, in Portugal. For a number of years now, Portugal, the entire country, using the federal budget, is choosing on the local level, on the level of a single school, for example, what school projects will be funded and supported. So here, for example, we need to understand that this, of course, is a question of terminology, but we already have governments that allow the citizens of an entire country to take part in making up their mind on what projects the national budget is going to be spent on. And here, there perhaps is a point to creating a separate event for this. We have Giovanni Allegretti with us, our amazing Italian and Portuguese expert who has his own opinion on this. But perhaps we do have a reason to discuss this partnership with the International Budgeting Partnership. How can we take into account the participatory budgeting in the methodology that we're currently developing? It's not an easy question. It needs to be developed and discussed, but we have the grounds for these discussions. And now bringing this to a complete close, in order to maintain the timeline that we have put up, I would like to say the following. Now, Yuri Belousov has provoked us towards this discussion, and this indeed is a very serious discussion. How quickly can we arrive at an electronic democracy, allowing every citizen to participate in the process of making legislative decisions and in making budgeting decisions? Well, as surprising as it may seem, I am a pessimist with this regard, because I'm studying budgets for a long time. And for me, budgeting is not a financial or an economic or a sociological category. It's an interdisciplinary category with a huge amount of politics involved. And today, budgeting is not a question of form of electronically, because electronic forms allow us to do this, and we do have cases around the world of how it is being done. It is a question of a political choice. And in an amazing article that Giovanni and our colleagues have helped us and wrote it for our thematical magazine, we have noted their amazing saying, thanks to what we see participatory budgeting develop in the Italian regions, thanks to the political will or legislative decisions. You know, it's not an easy question. It's not an easy problem. And the same goes for the Russian regions, because today, the legislation that is accepted on the regional levels in their majority do not help the participatory and initiative budgeting. So the biggest question is of political will. If the governor wants it, we see participatory budgeting. If we have the Ministry of Finances and the chairman of the Ministry of Finance, if they are consolidating the issue, it develops. If we have the head of the municipality on board, it goes. If it's not present, then nothing happens, like in the Moscow region, like we see it. We have a legislation, but we don't have the political will, and this practice does not develop. Colleagues, now, the time for our first section is up. We are saying goodbye for an hour in order to have lunch and to just have a little break. We've been here for almost 2.5 hours, and it's been great. You can stay in the conference, and at 2 o'clock exactly, we will continue. Now, Tatiana Vinogradova is going to be the moderator for the second section, and I hope that after the break, we are going to be talking about the formats of participation, about the necessity in participating in budgeting decisions, and this is going to be the focus of our next section. Thank you very much for your amazing participation and work. Thank you, and we'll see you soon at 14:00 Moscow time. So in 1 hour, we will continue.